hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. I, of course, am Mr. Warren Hayes, and it is Wednesday. What date is it today? It's the 7th of April, 2026, right? And we're going to be talking about professional wrestling here for a couple of hours right here on youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes or on your favorite podcast application, wherever it is you are consuming the Mr. Warren Hayes Show right now. I appreciate it, and thank you very much for being here. And if you wouldn't mind leaving a like if you're listening to this on YouTube, or a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, or a 5-star rating on Spotify, all that stuff would help out a great deal in making this podcast, dominate the airwaves, become king of the world. Why not? I could be the Joe Rogan of the left. Sure. We've got ourselves a nice packed show tonight. I think we've got some really, really interesting topics. Of course, we've got the review of New Japan Pro Wrestling Sakura Genesis 2026. That's in the can. We are going to do a deep dive into the newest filing from Janel Grant, the newest filing in an attempt to keep the proceedings from going into arbitration. So we're going to talk about that. We're talking about, of course, Chris Jericho's return to AEW that surprised quite a lot of people, and a few other things. We got a couple of other topics, but a nice, hearty, juicy episode of the podcast tonight. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I think this is who we're going to talk about to begin with. Chris Jericho, who, after months of absence from the world of professional wrestling, completely away from anything from the professional wrestling limelight, has returned against most expectations to All Elite Wrestling. He showed up last night, as we're recording this on Thursday on April 2nd. He showed up on AEW Dynamite last night on to start off the show in a complete shocker, I'd say. I don't think anyone was expecting that. I really don't. Now, I've talked about this already on the Dynamite review that I've recorded, and it is available right now for those of you who want to check this out. Oh, but I will go over a few more. I will go over a few points, and there has been some interesting developments. There has been a few extra developments since just earlier today over lunch. We got a few extra details, so we're all gonna get into that. So he showed up. He showed up last night, and I think I don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I say that most people had written him off coming back to AEW, right? Chat, back me up here. I think most people were like, yeah, this is pretty clear that he's going to, he's heading back to WWE. Look, there was chatter from the WWE side, it might have been low key, but there was chatter nonetheless. It really felt that way. Like he had been iced off of television since April last year. Since April 2025, Chris Jericho has not been on any AEW programming at all. And he's been taking acting gigs in the meantime, right? So, so he's been doing his thing. He's been taking it easy. And a lot of people thought this was just a sign that eventually Tony Khan was just going to say, that they already had some kind of handshake, right? Where it was like, well, okay, we're just going to let the contract run out. Here's the offer. And, if you want to come back, sign it. But if not, well, I think most of us expected the outcome that he was going to head back to WWE. And it made a lot of sense. I would argue it still makes a lot of sense. Like if he had decided to return, because I think Chris Jericho was in a spot where he needed a refresher, and more than just like a gimmick change, the master of transformation that is Chris Jericho. No, I think he needed a complete change of scenery, which is something you can do in the current state of professional wrestling in North America, you can jump to another promotion just to refresh yourself, freshen yourself up, get, different audience eyeballs on you and whatnot. I still maintain that this would have been the best outcome. Not that I'm upset that he's back, but I still think that this would have been the truly best outcome for Chris Jericho if he had decided to hop back to WWE and, get his Hall of Fame ring and, scum around with CM Punk and Cody Rhodes. And honestly, it would have been fine. I wouldn't have had an issue with it. I don't think anyone would have really had an issue with it. And I don't think AEW fans would have had an issue with it either, because he's very divisive. He's a very, very divisive guy in the company. People like Chat mentioned not that long ago, a lot of AEW fans have Jericho derangement syndrome and failed to see all the good that he has indeed done for the company. This is a guy who when he came in, he was the first world champion. Not only did he legitimize the world championship, he legitimized the company. He has always been a very big wrestling star. And to have him, there was a 1-2 punch that not a lot of people remember from back in the day, but the 1-2 punch was Chris Jericho showing up at the press conference and announcing that he was going to join All Elite Wrestling, and people were like, "Oh, okay, so this is going to be a serious promotion." And then the second punch of the combo was Jon Moxley showing up at Double or Nothing, right? And then people were like, "Oh, okay. Now even WWE guys want to be here," right? Like that was the thing. Like these were all so look, there was a part of this that was legitimizing the company, but then Jericho spent the majority of his career after losing the world championship, spent the majority of his career in AEW afterwards working with guys on the come up. And you can make we can talk at length about his, how the feuds ended. Did it really help the guys and whatnot? The stables that he had, the Jericho Appreciation Society, the Inner Circle, all that jazz. But he did work and accompany younger guys on the come up, to try and, have them share some of his spotlight, because Chris Jericho was indeed a guy you would constantly see on TV. He would be put on TV often. Why? Because he'd draw ratings. So you're going to put your ratings draws on TV so that more people will watch. People think that the demo god thing is just a self-centered joke, but there's reality to it. Maybe towards the end of his run, before he took his sabbatical, like I like to call it at this point, maybe after that time, maybe during that time, maybe his light had dimmed a little bit. I think it had, but I think it had because, and we've talked about it multiple times. I even had Joe Lanza on the podcast to talk about it some time ago. If Jericho's star diminished in AEW, it's because he lost all the time. This was a guy who wanted to put over other guys, and help create new guys, but he would do it to his own detriment. He would lose all the time. And then people will complain, well, you didn't help Ricky Starks, did he? You didn't help Hook and whatnot. But Jericho did his part. He did what the booker asked. He went through with the plan. The booker was like, you need to put this guy over. Jericho would do it. But then if the booker can't do a proper follow-up, that's not on Chris Jericho. That's why this idea of the Jericho Vortex has always been preposterous to me. It's been something that was created in the heads of fans, where it's like, oh, well, sure, he always looks better moving on. He doesn't look better moving on. He just moves on, and he's Chris Jericho, and he knows how to work. He knows how to work TV because he's been doing this for a million years. So if if the guy that beats Jericho is booked worse than Chris Jericho, whose fault is it? Whose fault is it? And are we going to have the creative control argument once again? Are we going to have to talk through that? I hope the hell not. I sure hope not. So you see, like, so ultimately, that's what I think. It's like he had a tremendous run. I think he's like, you know, I think he's a tremendously important component of AEW, of All Elite Wrestling. He is someone that I would, in Tony Khan's shoes, I would fight for him as well. My first world champion, the guy who helped establish the company, who brought credibility to my company, who was a ratings draw for me, who played a significant role in multiple instances of my company. Yeah, I do what I can to keep him. I absolutely do what I can to keep him. So, you know, if Jericho was ready to leave WWE, was ready to go to WWE, and had everything, all his ducks lined up in a row. Well, I mean, I'm Tony Khan, and I do everything I can to hang on to him, and not because he's an up and coming star. It's because he's a vintage part of the All Elite Wrestling experience, if that makes sense, you know. And I think okay, I'm gonna be careful with what I say here. The question, nonetheless, that I have is, what do you do with Chris Jericho in 2026? Because nonetheless, Jericho's true heyday literally was 7 years ago. Like, the prime of his AEW career is 6 to 7 years ago. So what do we do with Chris Jericho in 2026 in an environment in just the year he left? This company has changed so much. The visage of this company has transformed tremendously to a point where it's baffling how different it was. Where's Chris Jericho's spot in all of this? How does he join into this new fray? You know, like, we talk about it sometimes, how, you know, oftentimes there will be pro wrestlers from the early days of AEW who will show up on AEW television. You're like, who? Okay, these people feel like they're from another era. You know, we'll say that about the Dark Order. We'll say that about Scorpio Sky. We'll say that about Riho, right? And I know a lot of people don't want to hear it, but there's a lot. There's nonetheless that feel, that vibe. You know, it's something that when people talk about, oh, when is Britt Baker coming back? That's the first thing people say. It's like, well, how is Britt going to fit into, and that, you know, that's how it is. Then that makes a lot of sense. And this is Chris Jericho's case right now. You know, as a lot of these guys were on the come up while he was still around, you know, still working the mid card, working with Hook and all of that. How do you see him fit in with, you know, Will Ospreay and Hangman Page at the top and Swerve Strickland? And how does this all come together? You know, and Chris Jericho has a lot of attributes. He has a lot of, he has a lot of qualities, but, you know, his in-ring, wasn't all that great either. You know, he was starting to slip and whatnot, you know, wasn't all that great, folks. You know, look, there clearly was a path to WWE that was open, that he was walking down, but decided ultimately to turn back and return to WWE. And we don't know what the situation is. We don't know what it was. My main guess, folks, as I said on the Dynamite review, continue to plug that, because you should listen to my Dynamite reviews. They're awesome. Not only, look, they are better than ever. I have improved the quality, the perspective, the vision of the AEW Dynamite review. This is not your grandma's Warren Hayes Dynamite review. They're great. That's why I keep talking about them. But as I said in the review regarding Jericho here, and his decision to not go to WWE, It's money. It's money. It has to be money. There's nothing else as a principal impetus to change than money, in my opinion, for a guy like Chris Jericho. We threw some ideas around, maybe some other ideas as to why, he might have changed, if not the money, maybe if the money was similar or whatnot. But Dave Meltzer here today, Thursday, on Wrestling Observer Radio, he had some extra information already to feed us in regards to Jericho's decision to stay with AEW. And he said, I got the tip off. He said, I woke up, because the news had leaked on Wednesday, right? In the lead up, the news had leaked that there was a lot of chatter that Chris Jericho might be hanging around AEW for a while, that he wasn't going anywhere, that he might be coming back. There was a lot of chatter about that, kind of reminiscent to the chatter that we got with Private Party a couple of months ago at this point. And then both of these instances happened to be leaked on a Wednesday, and then guess who showed up on the Wednesday? That one time with Private Party, and that one time was Chris Jericho. But Dave got the tip off yesterday morning. He says he got a text message, and then he got a call saying that he got a text about Chris Jericho in WrestleMania, and then he got a call minutes later saying Jericho was going to be in Winnipeg for AEW, and he said, "Look, I couldn't print that. I couldn't go with that. I didn't have." I couldn't run with that story, but I had been tipped off. So this is what Dave was able to gather then, because he reached out to WWE, knowing Jericho had been in talks with them, and WWE's response was, he's not coming to WWE, and this is what Dave said: not now, not anytime soon, and maybe never. So, just look, if you tell me that kind of thing, that we're not coming, not now, not anytime soon, maybe never, you kind of feel like the conversation, the dealings kind of went sideways. Something not good happened to sort of spoil the broth here, so to speak. So that's when Dave then figured, he went, oh, okay, so this AEW thing has legs. And, for a lot of people, the trademark, the cornerstone trademark was, a lot of people felt that was a giveaway as well. Although, to be fair, there was so little chatter, so complete radio silence in regards to the Chris Jericho stuff. And I think again, the fact that everyone had sort of accepted the idea that Jericho was going to WWE, that no one paid it any mind. No one was like, oh, he's coming back, the trademark, the cornerstone. Why is he doing this? He wouldn't be trademarking things if he was going to WWE. No, So what Dave said then is that he was told that WWE wanted Jericho for a retirement tour, and that may not have been exactly what Chris Jericho was looking for. This is why AEW ended up making sense for him, right? He likely has more creative freedom and input into his own direction than what he'd have in WWE. And that goes without saying. That absolutely goes without saying. And again, this is different from having creative control. I hope you've all followed AEW enough so far to understand that wrestlers in AEW may have a lot more creative freedom to input their ideas into their stories and matches and whatnot than they do with WWE. But the buck stops with Tony Khan nonetheless. And Tony made that clear really not that long ago, where he flat out said, every decision goes through me, and I tell people no all the time. What does he even say? I give my marching orders. It's like, here you go. This is what I want to see. This is what the directions you're going. You guys figure it out. Then they come back to Tony and they work out the logistics of it, right? So of course, Jericho versus the writers' room and the, you know, their AI writer, because you know they have one. You remember, do you recall, what was it? Like last summer or something, when we were talking about how WWE was a little defensive on the idea that they said that they were going to start to use AI in different levels of the company, and that they were using something called writer AI, if I'm not mistaken, right? In their writer's room to come up with stories and ideas, but you know, it wouldn't be, you know, it would still be driven by people and humans or whatever the fuck, right? You remember that, right? So, you know, not only would Jericho have to fight against, let's say, you know, Michael P.S. Hayes, but he'd have to fight a fucking artificial intelligence. So of course that's probably something that helps sway Chris Jericho back to AEW. Possibly more money, right? You know, Dave speculated that AEW likely offered more. I say, like, that has to be the first, that has to be the critical thing right there. That has to be it. Absolutely has to be it. And if that's the case, if AEW offered more money for Chris Jericho and Chris Jericho still decided to go to AEW, no, then that shows that Chris Jericho is not a fucking mark. Maybe he did want to go to WWE, but he was like, look, he gets the final offer from Tony Khan and he goes back to, you know, whoever the fuck, Nick Khan or whoever's doing the negotiating, and says, look, this is the amount that AEW has given me. If you can't match that, I'm not coming. And they go, well, we can't match it. All right, well, sayonara, buckaroos, you know, type of thing. Maybe. But, you know, because we know that there are wrestlers who have taken less money just to go to WWE. We know this. And Chris Jericho probably sees that he has more longevity in AEW as opposed to WWE, who just wanted him for apparently just a retirement run that they could then feed to Gunther and move on. And Chris Jericho, look, he's what, 55 years old? He's a little bit older than me, right? I think that's it. He's like 55. And, you know, it's like I said in the, again, on the review, keep putting the review over, Warren. You're doing good. Thank you, Warren. You know, Jericho may not want to retire just yet, especially seeing some guys like Sting go at it for so long. Maybe he's not ready to retire just yet. However, maybe he's nonetheless thinking about his retirement and going, well, maybe in 3 years, in 2 years, whatever, you know. And clearly, in this circumstance, he's like, well, I trust Tony Khan to give me a better send-off than Triple H. I mean, Chris Jericho is not an imbecile, and he very likely sees what happened with John Cena at the very least, maybe even with Bill Goldberg. And if it was with Bill Goldberg, look, he probably saw what happened to Bill Goldberg and was like me and had a good chuckle out of it, right? But then he looks at it, then he does a little introspection. He's like, hey, hang on a second. Hunter doesn't like me either. So maybe I shouldn't do that. But then you see like John Cena, like mega star, super duper star, like the Oxford Dictionary definition superstar John Cena getting the retirement treatment he gets. And Jericho goes, you know, if I'm Jericho, I'm looking at that and I'm going, look, if John Cena can get a great retirement out of this jackass over here, how am I going to squeeze something out of, you know, the most creatively bankrupt man in professional wrestling? So, you know, I can understand where he's like, okay, I don't want to retire just yet. I still have something to give. I can still go, but maybe he's already pinpointed in time where he wants to stop. And I would 100% trust Tony Khan much more than Triple H, because Tony Khan, unquestionably, unless something happened backstage that we're not aware of, is unquestionably very holds Chris in high regard for everything that he's done for the company. So he will take care of him again, unless something really venomous happened, right? So those are the reasons that Dave brought forward, with a little editorializing by your friend here, Warren. But nonetheless, like Dave even argued, well, WWE would have made sense for a couple of reasons, right? A more proven platform at this stage of his career, a bigger audience. And on the case of the audience, and this is the part that I agree the most with Dave, is that the crowd situation in WWE would have been, as he put it, not as difficult as with AEW. Because like we all agree on, Chris Jericho is divisive. Chris Jericho is a guy that brings the worst out of people. There's a lot of people who absolutely hate him for multiple reasons. They're not all related to in-ring. Chris Jericho is just one of these guys that has a bunch of reasons for people to hate him, and they can pick and choose. And some people are put off by his in-ring style. Some people are put off by his politics. Some people are both. Some people are put off by worse, allegedly worse. So if he were to go to WWE, he wouldn't have this issue. He would be welcomed with open arms. People, the audience, the WWE universe would be in tears practically to see him come back, and he would have had a huge ovation, 40,000 people or whatever showing if he showed up at WrestleMania in a couple of weeks. It's like that's just how it goes, right? That to me was the biggest thing when I would talk about Chris Jericho getting refreshed, being in a different environment to refresh himself. That's pretty much what I was talking about. That's pretty much the thing that I was thinking of, where it's like, yeah, he's going to get refreshed with a brand new audience. That's essentially it. So, he came out last night, did the Winnipeg, AEW, I'm home, came out to Judas, so on and so forth. Look, I talk about listen to the review for the rest of that. This is basically the new information here. But, apparently his deal was frozen for a while, right? And it would have ended at the end of this year, but time was added back. It would have ended at the end of the year, at the end of 2025, but time was added due to injury and time off for, and stuff. And that was all added back. And apparently it was more than enough time for AEW to give him an offer he couldn't refuse. So there you go. That's the latest news that we have in regards to Chris Jericho's situation. It's nice to hear Dave confirm things, and say, yeah, WWE, we're talking with them. And I would even, I wouldn't even be surprised if we learned sooner than later that WWE was sure that he was going to come, that he was a lock, right? And something happened. And something happened to the point where, Jericho alluded to it when he was walking out, when he came out, with the little sly grin and just saying, I'm home, meant that that to me is a confirmation that he was seriously considering and was probably very close to going to WWE. Otherwise, why would he say, I'm home? He didn't really go. It's not like CM Punk, who left WWE, retired for 7 years, came back to AEW only to go back to WWE when then he hits the ring and he says, I'm home. Then you're like, oh yeah, sure. But Chris Jericho never officially left AEW. So the talks were, that to me screams that the talks were very advanced, that we had gotten very, very far. Not far enough for some. Not far enough for some, because he's back in AEW. So there you go. I mean, that's the listen, that's the thing. That's where we're at right now. It all seems very kosher. It all seems very kosher at this point. Chris Jericho is back in AEW, and I guess I'll wrap this up pointing this way. It's like as you can tell, and as probably many of you already knew, I am not hung up on against Chris Jericho like a lot of people are. Again, you can hate wrestlers or love wrestlers for whatever reasons you want. That it doesn't bother me. Okay, you can do whatever you want. But myself, I'm not Chris Jericho's biggest fan, but I'm also not his biggest hater. Whereas there's a lot of people who, just enjoy hating on him, right? So, I'm at a stage right now where I'm just invested, curious to see what is going to happen next. This, to me, right now, his arrival, his return to AEW is the most interesting thing. I think it is fascinating, and especially as someone who creates content for the internet, I am very, very excited to have the chance to speak on this again. I'm very excited to sit down and crack my knuckles and say, well, we're 3 months in now since Chris Jericho returned to AEW, and this is what's happening. Like, I am so into this. Like, this is a podcaster's dream right here. A Chris Jericho ditching WWE to make a surprise return to All Elite Wrestling. This is tremendous stuff. Absolutely tremendous stuff. So, that's where I'm at. And we are going to be talking about the Janel Grant lawsuit, the new filings that she put forward, she and her team put forward. Now, I will give you all a fair warning here. We are going to be talking about some pretty bleak stuff, some things that might be a little rough to hear, to listen to. Look, viewer discretion, right? And I'm giving you a heads up. Would not be insulted if you're like, Warren, I'll come back in 20 minutes and see if you're still on this, and that's fine. Because I kind of feel like with this new filing, I think it gives us an opportunity to just have a little refresher on what's going on, where we're at, and then talk a little bit about what the new stuff is, what the new stuff here is all about as well. So, Janel Grant filed a sworn declaration on April the 1st, yesterday, April 1st, 2026. She filed that in a federal court in Connecticut in opposition to the motions to compel arbitration. WWE, if you recall, WWE and Vince McMahon want the case to be moved to private arbitration rather than litigated in open court. Grant's declaration is her sworn testimony explaining the circumstances under which the NDA containing the arbitration clause was signed, and arguing that it was signed, the NDA, under duress and coercion, and therefore should not be enforceable. So the core allegation of this new filing is that McMahon used WWE's corporate infrastructure to facilitate, conceal, and enable years of, sexual exploitation and assault. Specifically, this is what it alleges here. Her job was created specifically to give McMahon access to her. Senior executives were informed of the sexual relationship and chose to enable it rather than investigate or stop it. She was transferred between departments specifically to manage corporate liability rather than her own welfare. The NDA was processed outside of WWE's legal department deliberately to avoid internal scrutiny, and the company's resources, including private jets, hotels, hotel bookings, and executive communications, were used to further the abuse. So once again, in this filing, there's a bunch of people who have been who are named. It's all names that we know were included. It's all names that we previously knew, but in certain circumstances we do have some new information in regards to their alleged roles in the whole circumstance here. Of course, Vince McMahon is named here. He's the central figure. Don't have to go over that. Brad Blum, if you recall, was one of the corporate officers. I can't remember which number exactly. He was formerly the executive vice president of operations and chief of staff. He, of course, is being accused. Well, of course, in the filing, he's being accused of being informed of the sexual relationship and enabling it, and overseeing Grant's removal from the legal department and appearing on a to-do list, coordinating her exit and the NDA process. Now, this is the first sworn testimony laying out the specific timeline of Blum's knowledge and his active logistical role in the NDA process, including drafting this to-do list that we'll get to that covers Grant's resignation and the NDA while she hadn't yet agreed to even sign it. Nick Khan, of course, he's been a part of it. In this circumstance here, he's accused of being formally notified by McMahon of the ongoing sexual conduct, waiting outside during sexual encounters rather than intervening, which is awful, and participating in executive discussions about managing Grant as a quote-unquote corporate liability. Now, again, this is the first sworn testimony specifying the March 2021 formal joint disclosure to Khan and Blum together, that where Vince basically told both of these guys, yeah, this is what's going on, type of thing. So that's some new information here. John Laurinaitis, of course, makes another appearance here. We didn't learn anything new in regards to old Johnny's stuff here. Brian Nurse, the general counsel, is alleged to have suspected or known about the relationship and raised it with Brad Blum, after which he was terminated. And McMahon allegedly said that then this was handled. Now, what's new about Nurse here in this circumstance is while Nurse's November 2020 departure was previously known, this is the first sworn testimony explicitly linking his termination to him having flagged the relationship to one of his superiors as a corporate liability. And then with McMahon saying, don't worry, we got rid of the guy. It's been handled. Brock Lesnar appears again in this filing as someone McMahon recruited as a quote-unquote playmate as part of contract negotiations. This filing goes significantly further than the previously reported ones. We've got a lot of specific details in here with the types of video requests, Brock having an alias, calling himself Polish Joe, and crucially, that contact between Grant and Lesnar continued until March 2022, 2 months after the NDA was signed. So the explicit framing of Lesnar as a contract negotiation inducement is also new at this level of sworn detail. Jerry McDevitt as well makes an appearance here. He is named as the drafter of the NDA, operating under extreme time pressure and communicating through unusual personal email accounts. Grant alleges she was instructed to withhold information from her own attorney while McDevitt coordinated the agreement terms. So we've got new sworn testimony here as well, specifically that McDevitt used a personal AOL instant messaging address rather than his K&L Gates address for initial NDA draft. So he used a personal email as opposed to his actual lawyer email, and that he sent the initial draft to Grant's attorney, but not to Grant herself. That's what we got here that is new. let's say we use this, we can go through it and we'll get into some details. We'll get into some details, especially around the NDA stuff. I swear to you guys, these allegations that she's brought forward into how the NDA was handled is absolutely mind-blowing. But look, the declaration, this filing, opens by establishing just how isolated and desperate Grant was when she met McMahon. We know this story as well. This was part of the original filing, that she had spent years as a full-time caregiver for her terminally ill parents. She had no family left after they died, no income, no savings. She had been rejected for multiple jobs, including a volunteer position at a hospital where she already worked. She described herself as living like a ghost and having lost all of her confidence. And this context is important because the declaration frames everything that follows as McMahon deliberately targeting and exploiting Grant with no support system, who had no support system and no fallback options, right? Essentially. So, as we may recall, Vince McMahon lived in the same building as her. That's how he met her, and was like, "Look, I'll create a job. I'll give you a job, and not only am I giving you a job, I will create a job in my company for you." The job wasn't an open position; it was built from scratch in the legal department, specifically to pair her with Rich Herring, described as a decades-long McMahon ally and a grieving widower in his 70s. The legal background Grant had from law school made the placement easy to justify on paper, but the real architecture of the role was about control and access to McMahon. McMahon explicitly told her the job was designed to give her someone who could protect her, meaning Herring, which in context reads as someone who wouldn't ask questions. So she continues talking about how the pandemic era created conditions that significantly escalated the abuse. With everyone working from home and Grant living in the same building as McMahon, she described having no separation between work and personal life. McMahon had unlimited access to her at any hour. She describes him flying in from Florida on the corporate jet, because remember, corporate at that time during the COVID era, they were running shows out of Florida, the Thunderdome, right? So he would fly in from Florida on the corporate jet specifically for sexual gratification and then would fly back. During this period, he began actively advertising her to other men, both inside and outside the company. And this is where we start getting some new information here. The declaration adds that McMahon told Grant during this period that filming had begun on the Netflix Mr. McMahon docuseries, right? And that Grant specifically cites this reason. She felt compelled to comply with McMahon's plan, not because she didn't want to risk having her life being blown up on national television as some sort of vendetta, right? This frames the existence of the Netflix production as a coercive tool, which was previously not established in the public filings. One of the more disturbing structural elements is how thoroughly the filing describes the impossibility of her being able to do any kind of reporting, like, to call upon someone for help within the company. She notes that even the company's most senior executives were, again, allegedly in her account, literally waiting outside during sexual encounters before resuming meetings. The message this sent her was that there was no authority above Vince to appeal to, and seeking help would not only be futile, but could be potentially dangerous. McMahon also mentioned his attorney Jerry McDevitt unprompted early in their relationship, specifically in the context of making problems and people who become problems disappear or go away. I think is what it was. The detail is clearly placed deliberately to establish that the threat of legal consequences was introduced before any NDA existed. On the question of when Khan and Blum were informed, Blum informed earlier and more gradually Blum was informed earlier and more gradually, with McMahon identifying him as someone who had figured it out. So that Blum has sort of put two and two together sometime before his November 2019 promotion, and Blum already relaying internal rumors about McMahon and Grant to McMahon by February 2020. Khan was put on notice by McMahon shortly after joining WWE in August 2020. Now, the formal joint disclosure to both men together on March 2021, when McMahon told Grant he had spoken privately with both of them and they were ultimately supportive of the plan to manage her as a corporate liability, is once again new testimony in this filing. Grant describes Khan's arrival in August 2020 retrospectively as, quote, the moment that my life changed for the worse, unquote. Her specific framing is that her fears about reporting the abuse were realized when she learned McMahon had put the company's new president on notice of the ongoing sexual conduct. She emphasizes that Khan never asked her whether the relationship was consensual, and instead also waited for McMahon to finish engaging with her sexually during meetings. And again, this is also new sworn testimony. The implication is clear. Once the president of the company knew and did nothing, any remaining possibility of institutional protection or escape through official channels was effectively closed off. What the fuck are you going to do, right? If the president of the company knows and he supports it, enables it, what are you going to do to try and get out of this? Who can you turn to? The mechanics then of her transfer from the legal department to talent relations are laid out in pretty significant detail. The stated reason internally was that her presence in the legal department was preventing the company from hiring a general counsel candidate, a female one at that, who operates, quote unquote, by the book. That's what was written in the filing. She was told to immediately clear her desk, remove herself from distribution lists, and tell no one, with the instruction to specifically not tell Rich Herring, right, the older gentleman that was supposed to look out, that was supposed to protect her, right? So to speak. So she was specifically told not to tell Rich Herring. And that's interpreted in the declaration as a deliberate choice to keep the legal department insulated from knowledge of what was happening, so the incoming general counsel search could proceed cleanly. So she offered to simply resign and leave the company entirely, which would have solved the problem a lot more simply, but guess who said no? Guess who turned down the resignation? The declaration frames this refusal as evidence that keeping her inside the company and under direct supervision was the goal, and not tidying up a liability. So the new stuff that we get here is that the filing adds the specific detail that Blum physically walked Grant from talent relations to the chairman's office, the chairman being Vince, of course, and waited outside while Vince offered her sexually to a WWE talent. We're not talking about Brock Lesnar here. We're talking about someone else. And that McMahon's behaviors became more outrageous after the transfer precisely because the corporate plan gave him cover to act openly at WWE headquarters. It is preposterous. In the filing, Janel Grant catalogs significant physical consequences of the abuse across the years. A lot of stuff, not great stuff, swelling, bruising, bleeding, and incontinence from violent sexual encounters, and as well as panic attacks, severe weight loss, hair loss, rashes, migraines, sleep debt, dizziness. There are multiple references to taking her own life as well, including at least two described attempts or near attempts one around April 2021 and another during the NDA signing period in January 2022. Where she describes considering jumping off of a balcony. It's reading through those, it's described in much more detail. There's a lot of stuff that is described in much more detail that I'm not getting into because it is so incredibly dark. I mean, the filing is out there if you want to really dig in to get the full gravitas of what's going on here, the real inhumanity. I'm sort of packaging it all together so that, it's consumable, but it's really bleak. One of the you want to hear about bleak? One of the filing's declarations most pointed arguments is that the abuse didn't stop after the NDA was signed. The declaration, this is new information, by the way, the declaration described a specific sexual assault occurring approximately a week after the signing, which had not been previously detailed in filings. The document also describes continued contact and pressure regarding Brock Lesnar and ongoing communication with Vince McMahon and other talent. That's when we start talking about more WWE talent we're probably having her being offered. Her formal last day wasn't even set until February, where with HR contacting her in early March. We learned here in this new filing that Lesnar continued having contact with her until late March 2022, 2 full months after the NDA was executed, which is new, with like I said, is new detail and undermines any framing of the NDA as a clear endpoint for legal purposes. This is probably the strongest element against the validity of the NDA that I've seen so far. Now, the NDA, the signing of it, putting it together, the signing, getting all the approvals and whatnot, I can only describe it as chaos, folks. And I can only put myself in her shoes. And I don't know how this woman is even remotely sane. And we're going to go blow by blow here. Because holy shit. Okay, so just as a setup here for the power dynamic going into the signing of the NDA, just to make sure we're all on the same level, just to understand on what playing field we're on here. Before a single draft of the NDA was circulated, the conditions were already stacked against Grant in ways the declaration, or the filing, I should say, clearly intends to establish as evidence of coercion. Okay? And I will continue, look, we're going to continue reading this. Of course, these are all allegations still, but holy shit, I don't know how anyone could come up with this. Like, this is me just simply editorializing. I don't know how anyone could invent the following sequence of events because I don't know how anyone could come up with this. So Grant had been instructed from the beginning to tell no one about her closeness with Vince. Vince had mentioned Jerry McDevitt, right? And his ability to make problems disappear early in the relationship, like we talked about, right? And he talked about this before any NDA had been ever discussed. Grant has no independent support system, no family, and her entire professional existence was tied to Vince McMahon. She had already attempted to take her own life around April 2021. And McMahon was the sole source of information about whatever external threat he claimed was leaking information about them. We're going to get to that in a second, okay? But this is what we're working at. This is square one. January 9, which I believe 2022, right? The NDA is introduced. McMahon, this is how it all goes, okay? It's really a blow by blow. McMahon invites Grant to his condominium late in the evening, consistent with his pattern of dropping destabilizing news at night. That's what he'd do. He tells her an anonymous source is actively leaking some information about his sexual conduct with someone at WWE headquarters, and frames her as collateral damage. He says he could lose his power, he could lose his marriage, he could lose his home if they don't do damage control. Grant panics, of course, offers to simply resign from WWE. He's like, okay, let's wrap this up then, Vince. Vince says a resignation plus signed paperwork would satisfy his wife and protect the both of them. When Grant expresses fear about the explicit content being weaponized, right? Vince said Vince won't say who he shared it with, but says thousands of men have probably seen it, and that the most compromising material, though, is locked in his personal safe. He lays out a detailed plan covering where she can go, who she can talk to, what cover story to use, and who to get a lawyer referral from. He tells her Nick Khan and Brad Blum are already on notice. He tells her the paperwork will go to K&L Gates, which is Jerry McDevitt's firm, and will be filed in a dusty drawer, quote unquote, with the others. Again, this is from, that's a quote from the filing. They have sex. Before she leaves, he instructs her to keep engaging sexually with Brock Lesnar. Okay. On January 13, McMahon unilaterally brings up money as they're sitting together in a living room. In his living room, to be specific. He smiles, slaps her thigh, and announces that he's going to give her $1 million to sign the paperwork. Grant describes feeling stunned, then disgusted, then enraged. She gives a non-committal answer because she has no desire to sign or take money and is trying to stall. The next day, the 14th, McMahon calls to inform her that payments will be in installments due to cash flow purposes, a detail she never asked about, and that McDevitt apparently was the guy who directed it. On that same day, on the 14th, McMahon texts Grant a photo of a to-do list drafted by Brad Blum. The list includes specific instructions: resign from WWE, hire an attorney, finalize the NDA. McMahon sends her a voice message saying that he and Nick Khan are ready to place her at a company like NBC, ESPN, with Khan personally making the calls. This is notable, as we recall, because Blum was actively drafting logistics around the NDA while Grant hadn't even agreed to sign. They were already putting all of this together, and she hadn't said, yes, I will sign it. So you see how this is going here. On January 19, Vince McMahon orders Grant to get an attorney referral and give it to him that same day because she had been refusing to do so, because she hadn't committed to sign. He explicitly tells her to treat the attorneys as a formality. He tells her to share only her name and address with the attorney, nothing substantive. Grant obtains a referral through her doctor, as McMahon had previously suggested. Wonder who, if you've been following, this is likely Dr. Kolker, right? From the other part of the lawsuit. She texts McMahon asking, can you tell I'm scared? On January 20th, then the process begins and already fucking goes sideways. McDevitt sends an initial draft of the NDA from a personal AOL account, email address, not his K&L Gates address, to Grant's attorney. The draft goes to her attorney, but not to Grant herself. Less than an hour after the draft is sent, John Laurinaitis texts Grant saying Vince McMahon told him about her resignation and offers to help. That afternoon, Grant texts Vince saying that she is sick and hiding under the covers, comparing how she feels right now to when her father passed away. Vince replies demanding she get it done by tomorrow if possible and to stay in touch while he travels. Grant speaks to her attorney shortly after and learns for the first time that a draft exists. Her attorney flags immediately that language in the NDA could be construed as Grant already violating it before she even signed it. Now, from the 20th to the 24th, okay, Grant does her best to get to get out of this process. She avoids her attorney for days. She actively pursues a new job elsewhere, trying to prove to McMahon that paperwork is unnecessary. She attempts to demonstrate that the practical separation is already achieved without any legal agreement, and McMahon does not relent. Vince keeps it going. Then on January 24th, Grant texts McMahon saying she cannot stop crying about the NDA. Vince's response is to tell her that, are you ready for this? This is his response. She texts him, says, cannot stop crying about the NDA. I can't believe this is going forward. I'm scared, Vince. I'm terrified. And his response is this, that he has booked Lesnar for Madison Square Garden on March 5th and expects her to have a sexual encounter with him at that event. Incredible. The implication being that her obligations to McMahon are ongoing regardless of what she signs. On January 25th, McMahon tells Grant that McDevitt has not signed an affidavit needed for the upcoming WWE board meeting. We've heard about this before. And he blames Grant's failure to sign the NDA as the cause. Grant consults her attorney about this, sharing information about what McMahon has said. McMahon finds out and responds with significant backlash. He attacks her attorney's competence and wordsmithing. He tells Grant that he and McDevitt don't trust her attorney and believe he poses a threat because he has information he could leak. This effectively turns Grant against her own legal representation. This is fucking nuts, folks. She describes this as eliminating any competing outside influences, leaving her once again with no one to turn to for independent advice. Again, I don't know how anyone could make this shit up. These are all allegations, but I'm reading this. There is no way this woman was able to construct all of this narrative. This is fucking compelling. On January 26th, Grant visits McMahon and pleads directly to be released from the NDA. She makes a very logical argument. This is what she says. She says she is no longer physically present at WWE HQ. Executives have been notified of her departure. The practical separation is largely complete, all without paperwork or money. It was like, what's the problem then? She even offers to sign a post-it or a napkin as a symbolic gesture of goodwill. Vince, of course, refuses. He tells her not to read the document at all. He tells her she is not looking at it the right way and to stop focusing on the words, focus on the effect. He frames it as protecting the both of them and says that they are in the driver's seat. And he confirms that Nick and Brad Blum are waiting for her to sign. At 1:55 a.m. on January 27, there's receipts to back this up for the timing here. Vince McMahon sends a voice memo. He begins by echoing her request to back out, then explains why that cannot happen. He says his attorney must inform the WWE Audit Committee that there is no pending or threatened litigation. As you will recall, this was all in regards to the shareholders, the purchase by Endeavor. It was all part of these machinations. Grant finds this confusing because she has not threatened litigation against anyone. Vince says that he will be, quote unquote, double fucked if she doesn't sign, referring to getting a divorce and being ousted from World Wrestling Entertainment. Grant interprets this recording as an explicit sign or else ultimatum on a hard deadline, and she understands from this that she is not free to leave. So then later on the 27th, like during fucking daylight hours, McMahon moves the deadline from January 31st to January 28th. Again, this is all due to the shareholders. Grant has not slept and tells McMahon this. Operating on no sleep, she asks her attorney to review quickly so she can get it over with while still hoping something will change. Now, we've got timestamps here because we've got text and email exchanges. At 5:38 p.m., her attorney sends his draft to Jerry McDevitt. At 7:01 p.m., McMahon sends Grant a completely different, clean version of the agreement directly to her phone and tells her to sign it immediately. At 8:56 p.m., Jerry McDevitt replies to her attorney saying he cannot open the attorney's draft and will have his secretary make revisions in the morning. At this point, there are at least 3 versions of the fucking NDA in circulation, none of which Janel Grant has been meaningfully involved in negotiating. Grant does not sleep at all between January 27 and 28. She tells McMahon this. Then the final day, January 28, D-Day. At 10:04 a.m., Jerry McDevitt sends a revised draft to Grant's attorney saying he worked off his own version and incorporated certain points from the attorney's draft as well as points discussed between the clients. That's right. There's a 4th version now. He notes he has a flight to catch and will be out of pocket until later that afternoon. He says it is his sense that the parties want to wrap this up today, aka Vince. At 3:15 p.m., Grant's attorney sends his own revised draft back to McDevitt. That afternoon, McMahon calls Grant while traveling for a live taping. He tells her he and Jerry McDevitt have argued about her not having signed. Jerry McDevitt has apparently told McMahon to deal with her himself. Vince now says it's entirely in Grant's hands. Grant makes one final plea to back out. McMahon reacts with fury. Multiple phone calls follow, during which he yells at her. He threatens that if he does not sign by 8 p.m., there will be serious public harm to him, his family, his marriage, his empire, his reputation, and her safety. I love how he keeps bringing up the marriage with Linda when everyone knows it's a fucking sham at this point. He tells her life as she knows it will blow up and she will solely be responsible for the consequences. Grant becomes suicidal during this period and considers jumping to her death. She describes this as her absolute breaking point, terrified, sleep deprived for multiple consecutive days, unable to make sense of anything. At 7:47 p.m., she texts the executed signature page to McMahon as proof 13 minutes before the deadline. At 7:50 p.m., she emails a signed copy to her attorney. She states she does not even know which version of the agreement she signed. Immediately after signing at 8:42 p.m., her attorney emails her with concerns about the NDA and the negotiation process, noting that McDevitt has been unresponsive that day. Per McMahon's instructions, Grant does not tell her attorney that she has already sent him a signed page. At 9:09 p.m., she texts McMahon saying she is scared and begs him to call. On that call, she cries that her life is now in his hands, begs to be allowed to live quietly, and admits she is having suicidal thoughts and wants to jump off her balcony. That's how it all ends. I told you guys, the NDA signing was absolute chaos. Now, when it comes to the arbitration clause, which is what all of this, why this is being filed, it's in response to moving everything to arbitration to keep it out of the courts. Grant states clearly and directly that she has no memory of the arbitration clause whatsoever. No discussion of it with Vince McMahon. No discussion of it with her attorney. No recollection of reviewing it. No recollection of either Jerry McDevitt or her attorney making revisions to it. No recollection, of agreeing to arbitrate. She was in a state of extreme distress, fear, and sleep deprivation throughout the entire NDA period, including during whatever drafting process touched that provision. So the last point there is from what I understand, because I'm not a lawyer, but there's people who know legalese that I can ask questions to, and they answer me with what they know. But they gathered that this is the legal core of the whole declaration, right? This last declaration, the last point here, that she was in a state of extreme distress, fear, and sleep debt. Everything else is context building to that conclusion. That whatever she signed under conditions that made meaningful, that whatever she signed it under conditions that made meaningful, informed consent to any specific clause essentially impossible. This is what she's going to bet on to make sure that the agreement, or that this trial, I should say, this litigation doesn't go to arbitration. There you go. That's all the stuff that came out of this little 30-page filing. I say 30, little, but bear with me. And it is an insane document when you start reading it. And trust me, folks, there is some stuff I left out because there was really no point in detailing certain actions, certain things. There is some legitimately gross stuff in that document. And I can understand, once again, that these are all allegations, right? That this is her putting this out there, and if this goes to court, well, Vince has to prove his innocence, and WWE has to prove that they didn't do any wrongdoing and whatnot. We understand how this goes, but I cannot fathom how she could have come up with this. Just come up with this. I don't know how anyone could come up with this kind of scheme out of pure fantasy. This is something that has to happen to someone. This is something that just comes together. It is a crazy, crazy document. It's more than, honestly, crazy is diminishing it. It's bone chilling. It's disgusting. And I can only hope a judge looks at this and goes, yeah, you know what? I'm convinced. I'm convinced. Let's move on here. Let's not send this to arbitration in Connecticut. It had been a while since we hadn't really, it had been a while since we had done a real deep dive in regards to the Janel Grant stuff, that we had really gotten into some nitty gritty. And I thought this was a really good opportunity to do it. Maybe even, like I said, serve as a refresher for maybe some folks who are like, I don't quite recall what was going on. Where are we? Because there's been, just a few things. But this is this is one of the more significant filings because there's all sorts of new information in here, including the fact, as we mentioned, that Vince shopped her around to multiple different talent, not just Brock. Brock was mentioned, but there were others. Where they just shopped around, or did she go ahead and actually perform sexual acts with these wrestlers, these talent? I don't know. Of course, we don't know. Will this be the kind of stuff that might come out? I don't know. Maybe. Depends on how deep all of this goes, how much, if it does go to discovery and it becomes public, maybe. I legitimately don't understand anyone who is sort of salivating at the mouth at the idea that Vince McMahon might be showing up at WWE. Because we've seen a couple of these. We've seen Cody Rhodes insult, he had his promo on Monday Night Raw against, having a promo with Stephanie McMahon, because that's all the WrestleMania builds are. They're all promos, right? Face-to-face promos. And you have Steph there, and she's making fun of, she's basically saying to Cody, you're not Dusty, you're not your father. And Cody responds the same to her and says, well, you're not your father. And it's treated as an insult. And even the audience goes, whoa. I'd be like, no, I'm not. Thank you, Cody. That's very kind of you. I am not like my perverted, manipulative, twisted, sick in the fucking head sex trafficker of a father. Alleged sex trafficker. But it was treated as an insult. And then what happens the next day? You know, the state media, right? Busted open radio. Tommy Dreamer. What implications would Vince coming back have on the main event? You're like, Jesus Christ. Really? Really? This is what you want to talk about when it comes to Vince McMahon maybe showing up at WrestleMania. Maybe. A big old fat maybe, right? This is what you want to talk about. The implications of Vince being inserted in the storyline. I don't understand the brain of any of these fuckers. I really don't. There's to a degree, like a guy like John Cena. I can understand how he feels indebted to Vince because he owes everything to Vince. He owes his entire career to Vince McMahon, but he will never, ever, ever say anything bad about him. He will stick up for Vince until the very end. And I think it is perfectly acceptable for a human being in this type of situation to say, hey, you know what? I will always be indebted to Vince. I'm very thankful for everything he's done to me. I wouldn't have a career without Vince McMahon. But the man that is coming out now is not the man I know, and I condemn it, and I cannot be associated with him. And I think that's fair. I think that's a very reasonable human way of approaching this. I don't know who can just sit back and go, yeah, this is good. That's fine. I'll just turn the other way. It's all allegations. You're throwing him under the bus. The thing with Vince is that this is not new. I mean, in this type of detail, it's new. In this type of detail, it's new, but allegations of Vince abusing women in multiple ways is not new. This has been going on for a long time. It is a poorly kept secret in professional wrestling. It should not be taking anyone by surprise if that it went this far, ruining this woman's life allegedly in the way it did. I think it's cause for concern. And that's why you can't, these are all allegations. When it happens so many times to the same person over and over again, it's not just a one-time thing. Like this is a pattern. That's what a lot of these people are just like, oh, these women are just making allegations. They have no proof. But why are there so many? And in the case of Vince, so many over multiple years, decades, going all the way back to Rita Chatterton. This is not like a 2-year pattern of women he met and, you know, the scorn lover thing. It's nothing like that. Vince has been doing this unabated for decades. I don't know why people just can't get sensible about it. That's the reality of it. There was a little bit of a controversy that erupted over the weekend. Just a little bit of controversy. Just a little bit of something here, right? That took a life of its own. That started blazing like a fire everywhere because Mercedes Moné vacated the final title that she has because of budget issues regarding the promotion. Let's read the article off of the Figure 4 Online. Mercedes Moné wrote in her Moné mag that she had to vacate the APAC women's title due to issues with the promotion, saying that they were unable to fly her out to Malaysia to wrestle there and were not willing to work with other promotions in order to find a solution. And here's a quote here from the Moné mag. While I was in London, I had to make a tough call. I sent the Malaysia Championship back. My team and I really tried to make things work. We put in the effort, had the conversations, and explored every option. But at the end of the day, they told us they didn't have the budget to fly me out and weren't open to working with other promotions, she wrote. For me, that just didn't align with the vision, so I made the decision to vacate the title. With the vacancy, that was the quote. With the vacancy, Moné is officially out of titles as the only one remaining. The Owen Hart Foundation tournament title is only defended annually. It's not a title. It's like a trophy. It should be a trophy. It's not a title. They just made the belts and it was never a belt. And it was never a belt. That was part of the heat is that it's a belt that's never defended. So, and she was carrying it around as if as if it was, a title. That was part of the heat. Anyway. With the vacancy, Moné is officially out of titles and the only one. Oh, I just read that. Warren! At her peak, Moné had held 13 titles at once, including the TBS Championship, the CMLL Women's Championship, the Ring of Honor Women's Television Championship, and the Rev Pro Undisputed Women's Championship. Isn't it Undisputed British Women's Championship? I feel like there's a British missing there, among others. Her slide started at the end of last year, with the most prominent loss being to Willow Nightingale for the TBS title on the final AEW Dynamite of 2025. Moné took a break from AEW television following the loss, but resurfaced in March, dropping all of her titles, including recently losing the Winnipeg Pro Wrestling Women's title to Jody Threat. Now, of course, unsurprisingly, some are saying this is getting more traction and more attention than all of the other titles that she has traveled to and unfortunately unsuccessfully defended, to drop the titles back, and so on and so forth, right? Now, we talked about this last week. Look, I made an entire segment about it, talking about how it's preposterous no one is talking about it, that it's preposterous no one is making any real big time coverage out of it. The fact that this woman is going around and that collected 13 titles and is dropping each and every one of them the right way, going back to the promotion, dropping it to a local, and leaving and walking away. And how unprecedented it is to be doing that. Absolutely fucking unprecedented. Now, there was okay, how about I'll settle this right now. I know why people aren't making a big deal out of this. People made a bigger deal out of Kenny Omega winning 3 titles a couple of years ago than Mercedes Moné winning 13 and then going around back to dropping all of those titles everywhere she went, except for one now, of course. 13 titles, all of them dropped. No one was talking about it because most of the fucking loudmouths, most of the podcasters, most of the great think piece writers would go around essentially saying, we're going around saying that she was selfish, that she was ruining women's wrestling. They'd start calling her Mercedes Hogan, right? Because suddenly she was in creative control of everything that she did, instead of opening their fucking eyes, realizing what was going on, and then saying, hey, this is what it looks like when someone is being pushed in pro wrestling. This is a push. This is a big time superstar push. But not the Mercedes Hogan, because all of these people, and influencers, all of them who said that are all children who don't understand nothing. And yet that was the through line. So of course, once she starts dropping the titles and she's doing it the right way and she's losing match after match after match, those Mercedes Hogan people, they aren't saying a single word. They're not suddenly going back and saying, oh yeah, she's ruining women's wrestling, etc., etc. They're shutting the fuck up, because if they were to say anything, they would either come off as complete imbeciles or hypocrites, or why not both? So they're not saying a single fucking word. So the issue that she has here is that they won't fly her out and whatnot, and that's unfortunate. That sucks. They don't have the money. They don't have the budget. That's what she says here in her Moné mag, and of course this blows up. This, however, blows up because then again, people can instantly start going, oh, well, she has the money. Why doesn't she fly out there herself? You know how this goes. Don't forget, she did not fly out to Malaysia to win the APAC wrestling title. She won it at a House of Glory show. Was in November, right? Something like that. So, it sucks. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, it's like, and no one wanted to like feature this match. No one wanted to add this to their, to their lineup. No one, not go back to House of Glory, nothing. Weird. But then, because this was getting traction, and because, people were upset, the promoter of APAC Wrestling put out a statement, and a lengthy one too. Shakat, I believe, is how you pronounce his name. I could be wrong, and it is not to be funny. I am not quite sure how to pronounce it. Shakat responded, made a post on social media where he clarified the situation and addressed the allegations. I don't know what allegations were being addressed, but I woke up on 3 hours of sleep to a flood. This is his statement, in case you're wondering what the fuck am I talking about. I woke up on 3 hours of sleep to a flood of texts, tags, and questions. So let me say this clearly. I have nothing but respect for Mercedes Moné. She is a global star in high demand, and I understand that her schedule and travel limitations are real. I do not blame her for this situation, and I appreciate the opportunity we had to work together. But the public narrative being pushed does not fully reflect what actually happened. We did try. We did explore working with other promotions because that was what was asked of us. I personally reached out, followed up, and tried to make multiple scenarios work. I also need to correct this clearly. I did not ask other promotions to fly my wrestler in for us. I guess these were things that were being thrown around. There's parts of this drama, let's call it what it is, that I didn't see go by. So I guess he was being accused of asking other promotions to pay for her travel, which is kind of weird, don't get me wrong, but we don't know what types of relationships that this guy might have. And besides, he's flat out denying it. I have the text and email receipts to back it up. And I am prepared. What are the receipts you have? What are the receipts you have if you didn't ask promotions to fly your wrestler in? Like, what is the receipt for something you didn't do? my empty sent folder. It's like, I am prepared to stand on that truth if necessary. I'm not trying to discredit what he's saying. It's just a funny line where it's like, I have receipts that I didn't send anyone any questions about using them to fly in Mercedes Moné. That's cuckoo bonkers. I have chosen not to post private communications lightly because I still believe in handling it business professionally, but I will protect my name when needed. For more context, I was even willing to go beyond our limits on my side. I openly said I would take on extra work and secure sponsors to try and bring Mercedes to Malaysia. That ultimately was not workable, which I understand. So we were pushed to explore solutions abroad instead. I would have genuinely loved to make something work with Arek in Poland and Hal in France. Both were respectful, professional, and tried to find real solutions. I appreciate both of them for that, but when we looked at the full picture, it simply did not make business sense financially for us. He also opened up about his interaction with Winnipeg Pro Wrestling. And again, this is something I don't know. Was there beef here? Was there a situation? I don't know what he felt. I don't know what he was responding to. Again, there's bits of this that aren't necessarily super relevant, but anyway, not super relevant, but also help paint the picture, as a character witness, I guess, so I'll just read the statement. I also want to address Winnipeg Pro Wrestling. Our interaction was minimal. Was initially ignored and only received a single response declining based on budget and their story direction, which I respected. That was the extent of it. So the public version being pushed does not reflect my actual communication with them. Again, I have receipts for that. I am not here to tear anyone down or create more drama. He also shared a message for Moné and apologized to her for the trouble. To Mercedes, I sincerely apologize for any public discomfort this has caused. I still have respect for you, and I understand that you are likely speaking from what was communicated to you. So I guess the drama and why he felt he needed to respond was around the fact that Mercedes was getting heat because basically she said, they don't have the money to fly me in. So, and that was probably just like the gist of it, right? Because she has people working for her, and she said it herself she said it herself in her Moné mag that her team tried their best to make this happen, but it didn't work. So she trusts them. She's like, okay, why am I not going? Well, they don't have the money. Oh, that sucks. Okay, well, let's send it back type of thing, right? He also explained the financial realities behind the situation, explaining that APAC Wrestling operates without major funding or sponsorships and often runs its shows at a loss, making the cost of international travel and logistics very difficult. Shokat added that these constraints ultimately prevented them from bringing Moné to Malaysia, which in turn affected their plans for Nor Phoenix Diana, who was left with without the in-ring closure that they originally intended for her. And then they get the quote where he says pretty much exactly that. It seemed to create drama, but look who was involved. Like Mercedes, who is a magnet for this stuff. For some reason, there is just a target constantly painted on her back, where all that happens bad can all be pointed back to her again for some peculiar reason. I don't understand it. I don't understand why Mercedes is. I don't know why Mercedes is in that spot. I think I do understand, but they're generalizations, and they're sort of like observations, but I can't say it with certitude. But I think it's a couple of reasons. I think first and foremost, there's a lot of these people who run these shows, these microphones, these podcasts, and write articles on all these sites and whatnot. They're die-in-the-wool WWE fans, regardless of how they want to present themselves. They grew up with WWE. They watch WWE. They love WWE. So, maybe they're a little butthurt that Sasha Banks left. That could be one thing. And I'm finding it very difficult to find counter arguments to the misogyny allegations from all these people as well. I find it very hard to argue the opposite. I legitimately think if it was a dude who was doing this, it would be screamed at the top of the mountains. People would be excited about it. Like I said, we were all losing our minds 4 or 5 years ago when Kenny Omega was running around with 3 belts. And this woman got 13, working tiny promotions on top of that, doing and not just indie grind, but and this is somehow, not covered. It is not expressed with reverence. We don't talk about it with awe and talking about how historic it is and whatnot. Why do you think I ended up writing an article on Voices of Wrestling, essentially parroting everything I talked about here on the podcast? Well, because I know not everyone listens to my podcast, and because I wanted to get that out more and more as much as possible. Get it out into the VOW readership so that could at least stick into their minds. And well, she's a woman of color. And I'm having trouble dismissing these arguments. I'm legitimately having trouble dismissing these arguments because they're all these guys, these gals, like everyone who's not talking about it, everyone who didn't cover it properly are making the argument for me because there is no other reason why this should not be covered with reverence. And we should not be talking about how unprecedented it is for a professional wrestler to go out and do things the right way instead of taking a cheap way out, a quick payday, conning people out of their money, which is historically what would happen. And instead, she's going around dropping all the titles, and unfortunately for one, with circumstances that seem rather unfortunate and quite clear to me. I don't understand the reactions based on what she's doing. None of the reactions make sense. So oftentimes, I'm not saying always, but oftentimes when I see people arguing online and I'm not just saying about this, like in general, right? Where the issue of skin color breaks up, or ethnic background comes up, or gender and whatnot. I'm often very I tread those waters carefully because sometimes they make sense. Sometimes I feel there's holes in that type of argument. It depends. In this circumstance, factually speaking, Mercedes Moné, one of the great women's wrestlers on earth right now, inarguably the greatest North American women's wrestler of all time, going around doing this, should be treated with reverence. And instead, it's mostly radio silence. The main outlets are not reporting this they're not having, roundtables talking about it. We're not seeing headlines or thumbnails talking about the greatness of Mercedes Moné and all this shit. We don't see it. But I genuinely believe at this point, because they're making the case for me, that people saying that, they're genuinely making the case for me that if she was a dude, and preferably a white dude, it would be an entirely different situation. And I'm starting to believe it. Because factually speaking, objectively speaking, there is no reason that wrestling media in general, that the discourse should not be latching on to this. There's no reason. There is no observable reason, but yet they're not. And instead, we'll clasp onto a story that might end up painting Mercedes in a poor light. It's fucking bullshit, boys and girls and everyone in between. It's fucking bullshit. I get worked up about it. I know I get weirdly worked up about it, as if I'm like I have some connection to Mercedes, like, she's like my cousin or something, but no, we're not related. I don't know. No, I don't know her. I've never spoken to her in my life. I just get worked up about it because her run in the past year has been an all-timer run, and people are just ready to dismiss it. More people talked about Orange Cassidy's international title run and how great that was. And he was basically wrestling just about anyone on Dynamite, but yet me too. We all said how great it was. But it's a mid-card title that he's defending against J-Brones and mid-card guys on AEW programming. But I have no issues calling it what it is, right? I have no issue saying that it was because it was an all-timer run. What the fuck are we doing here? And on top of that, Mercedes is a all-time wrestler. She is great. When the facts are too strong to support silence, to support, poo-pooing and acquiescing, but not deep diving in it, there's a problem here. There's a legitimate problem, and it goes beyond pro wrestling. And there's, it gets a little ugly, if you ask me. Otherwise, prove me wrong. I'm completely open. Prove me wrong. It's just like in my thought process, this is where I'm at. It's the only thing that starts making sense. It's, racists and incels. If you want to boil it down, that's essentially what it is at this point. And it's not as if pro wrestling discourse is immune to those categories of lovely human beings. Snoop Dogg Warren, yeah. Don't worry, during the end of year awards time, those same people will cry foul if she wins anything. Then they'll wake up. When a woman of color stands up for herself and walks out of WWE, that's just never going to be okay with a certain set of people. I agree. Look, for a time, I didn't want to latch on. But not that I didn't want to latch onto it, but I thought it was, there's got to be better arguments, right? There's got to be something else. But no, there's really nothing. There's really nothing. Austin Aries had a belt collector run and it did not end well. No, it did not. Most of the time, it doesn't work well. I would think I would think that the biggest wrestling like angle storyline story that happened over the past couple of days has to do with Pat McAfee being inserted into the WrestleMania main event. And we're going to read this article here that from the Figure 4 Online to catch us all up to speed for those of us, well, not those of us because I'm up to speed, but for those of you who are not quite sure what I'm talking about, it was the talk of the town for on the internet wrestling universe for the past couple of days. So here's the article. Pat McAfee was the mystery guy. The mystery caller revealed off Friday's excuse me, let me say, Christ, we're in for a hell of an evening if I can't read sentences. If I can butcher such a simple sentence so quickly, we're in for a rough night, folks. Strap in. The mystery caller revealed, Jesus Christ. This is not a bit. The mystery caller reveal kicked off Friday's SmackDown. I did it, you guys. Cody Rhodes didn't waste time coming to the ring and attacking Randy Orton. However, he was quickly cut off by McAfee, who entered the ring and gave Rhodes a low blow. Orton attacked Rhodes with a steel chair as McAfee cut a promo, revealing that he had been the one telling Orton to kill everything in sight. McAfee explained his actions. Did he now? Saying that the business Rhodes leads now is terrible, and Orton was going to save the fucking business, recalling the peak of the Attitude Era fondly while dismissing the current business. He complained about WWE programming, asking the crowd why he had to watch, quote, two 5'5" guys do a 45-minute Iron Man match 10 weeks straight for no rhyme or reason, unquote. And also brought up WrestleMania tickets still being on sale and SmackDown's quote unquote worst rated episode of all time. The segment ended with McAfee and Orton leaving together as WWE officials checked on a battered Cody Rhodes. Brian Alvarez is reporting that he heard McAfee as a possible mystery man candidate, though the assumption was that it wasn't happening. Here's Alvarez's quote. Pat McAfee as Orton's mystery man was the guy I hinted at on Wrestling Observer Live earlier in the week, but the feeling at the time was that it had fallen through. Apparently, it had not. Since his heel turn following Elimination Chamber, Orton has been talking on the phone with someone that seemed to enable him to tap into his darker intentions, attacking Matt Cardona after he initially seemed interested in apologizing. During the week, it was confirmed that the mystery person would be heading to SmackDown on Friday. Let's start with this. I mean, we have a sequence of events here to go through, but we are going to start. Let's start with the angle itself. There's extra news that happens, right? There's extra happenings and other stuff that happened that I will break down. I will talk about, but we need to focus on this first and foremost, I believed, and then we'll move from there. Rory Starks, nice to see you. Welcome to the chat. As you, Dr. Antox, good to see you. You call this an angle? I mean, what else am I supposed to call it just to make sure everyone understands what's going on? Anyway, an angle can be really, really bad too. McAfee being revealed as the surprise guy, I think ended up having a sentiment of disappointment in a lot of people. I think a lot of folks were expecting someone else. I believe that a lot of people were sort of hoping that The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, the Disruptor, would show up to do this. There were a couple of names out there. I even saw some Vince McMahon talk since, since WWE has been bringing up the topic of Vince McMahon all by themselves recently. I can't blame anyone who was thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe it is Vince. Maybe they are just like setting us up here so that eventually Vince returns and he's the guy. I think overall this was not well received by fans of the big WWE. I was going to say the Big E, but that would not have been fair to Big E himself. So, I think a lot of people are like, oh, this is kind of lame. And the promo he cuts. Now, here's the thing. The promo that he cuts is absolutely awful. And I cannot believe that in 2026, this is the angle we're running. That this is the story that we have decided, when I say we, I mean WWE, have decided to put forward to get people interested for their WrestleMania show. The angle that we're doing here to get people to buy tickets for WrestleMania is essentially the show right now sucks and I'm going to make it better. But WWE having issues selling out all the tickets that they have so that they can make all the money, not just a lot of money, all the money, decide that the best course of action here to entice a crowd who is already maybe a little chilly at the idea of spending money to buy WrestleMania tickets, the best idea they could come up with to warm that crowd up is to say, yeah, our product stinks. It is not good right now. And I find that absolutely fascinating. I think it's absolutely bonkers. And now this right here, this angle right here is WCW 2000 bullshit. And it's funny because people will complain, particularly when it comes to AEW, will see something they don't like and will immediately start saying, oh, this is some WCW 2000 bullshit. This is some WCW 2000 bullshit. And then you can look at that and say to yourself, well, not really. Like for people who have actually watched that era of pro wrestling, most of the time the WCW 2000 comparisons are unjust because a lot of these people who are using it never watched it. They just know it's the most reviled era in pro wrestling and one that ultimately helped to sink a company without necessarily having watched it. Now, I can confirm with gusto that running an angle saying our promotion stinks, our promotion stinks is 100% WCW 2000 bullshit. It was something that Vince Russo in his infinite wisdom decided to run. You'd have guys like Scott Steiner come out and literally tell people, change the channel, go watch Raw because our show stinks. And this somehow was the tactic to lure people back, to make sure that people not just lure people back, but to keep their dwindling audience watching. And you have one of the top guys in the company at the time saying, hey, all of you, hit the bricks. What we're doing, what we're putting on here is junk. And that is exactly what Pat McAfee, now he didn't say, go watch AEW. That would have been seismic, okay? That would have been an absolute bonkers comment. But nonetheless, he's there saying that, that the business stinks right now, that whatever Cody's doing is awful, and that, you remember the Attitude Era, how great that was. That was some great wrestling. And here's the thing. I watched this promo and I'd like to run it for you, but I'm going to get this for sure gets copyright stricken. And I just don't want to, like, not stricken, not a strike. I don't get a strike, but it'll get claimed. That's the word I was looking for. I'm going to get claimed for that one. And I don't want to get claimed. I don't want to, WWE is, yeah, they're fucking vultures, man. They're awful. So I watched the thing, and when he starts talking about the Attitude Era, it doesn't get the reaction that people, I'm sure they thought, not that people were sitting on their hands, but you didn't have a bunch of people going, whoa, and then let's say break into to an Austin chant, which was, or, Rocky sucks or something like that. None of that. There's nothing that happens in the crowd because you know what? Most of their fans, most of WWE fans today did not watch the Attitude Era. They hear podcasters, they hear pundits, they hear, every fucking person under the sun who came up in that era say, oh yeah, the Attitude Era was the greatest wrestling era in all of professional wrestling. You just have to look at all the numerous, the hundreds upon hundreds of Attitude Era rewatch podcasts that exist out there. The ones that revisit the Attitude Era, hundreds upon hundreds of people who do that. So the narrative is there. So if anything, they react because they feel they have to, because they're like, yeah, awesome. Yes, that's correct. I was told that the Attitude Era was great. But these are all new fans. These people that are in that audience, they don't know jack about the Attitude Era. Most of them don't. The great majority of them don't. The fact that he's bringing it up, I'm like, and it's sad. It's sad because even today, WWE still cannot move on without always hearkening back to this era, which is now like fucking 30 years ago. 30 years ago, our product was really fucking hot. I don't think this is the own that they think it is when they start talking about it. I think it's really fucking sad. I think it's extremely desperate. Remember 30 years ago when pro wrestling was really cool? Remember that? That was 3 decades ago. Today, the business stinks. And I don't know what he meant. What, by 2 5'5" guys doing a 45-minute Iron Man match 10 weeks straight for no rhyme or reason? What? Look, I admittedly do not watch WWE on a weekly basis, but I feel like if for 10 weeks straight, there were 2 guys doing 45-minute Iron Man matches every week, again, for 10 weeks straight, I would have heard about it. I'm pretty sure I would have heard about it. What is he talking about? Chat, and I know you might not know. This might just be complete bullshit. What is he talking about? Now, if he had said something like 2 5'5" guys doing a flippy-do gymnastic contest, then you're like, oh, okay, now I understand. And I know, so now I understand. Now I know what kind of crowd he's trying to appeal to, or at the very least mimic. And this might even be a shot at AEW. That might even be it. It's like, I have no idea what this meant. Oh wait, chat might have an answer. That was a straight jab of Ilya Dragunov and Carmelo Hayes in the US title. Were they doing Iron Man matches for weeks and weeks upon weeks? I swear I haven't heard of that. So they were doing an angle where they were just like they were super competitive with each other type of thing. They were doing Sasha Banks. They were doing a Sasha Banks Charlotte Flair type of thing. Is that it? I don't understand. I don't understand what he's criticizing. And if there's one place that will not have 2 5'5" guys doing 45 Iron Man matches for weeks at a time, if there's one place that is not going to do that, it is WWE. And then he brings up the fact that there are still tickets on sale for WrestleMania, and that's, he doesn't understand, and that's the indictment, and I agree. Look, the thing is that I agree with him. He says, this is a consequence of a terrible product. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to sit here and then say, I will tell you why Pat McAfee is wrong, because Obafemi is awesome. I'm not going to start breaking down why I think he's wrong. Au contraire, I think he's right. The problem is that this guy is on your television show where you're supposed to be convincing people to buy tickets because you want them to, because you're telling them that your product is good and that the things that you're doing on your wrestling show are good. And instead you're telling them, nah, tickets aren't selling because it's shit. Okay. This is a bizarre twist here. I do not understand what they're trying to do. This is WCW 2000 shit. This is Vince Russo shit. I swear to God, with the amount of surprise entrances and swerves for swerve's sake, I'm starting to think Paul Levesque has been looking at Vince Russo tapes instead of really leaning into what Vince would do. Vince would not allow his product, his promotion, to be besmirched by his talent in an angle. Not in this way, at the very least. Not in a way where you're exposing actual flaws. Not in this way. It's supposed to be a work shoot thing, I guess, right? Is this the thing? It's supposed to be like a little work shooty thing again. Hey, folks, how many times has a work shoot drawn money in the history of pro wrestling? Tell me. I'm gonna give you a chance here to answer. How many times has a work shoot drawn money in professional wrestling? I'll tell you how many times. 0. There is only one work shoot that ever mattered. I'm not even sure it drew money, but the only one that ever mattered was Brian Pillman using his work shoot to go to WWE. That's the only work shoot that has ever mattered. I cannot believe that WWE, on the road to WrestleMania, their biggest fucking show of the year, decided that to spruce up ticket sales, to get people hyped and talking about WrestleMania and being excited about it, they decided to pull the trigger and bring in Pat McAfee and allow him to tear into the product and say what everyone thinks out loud, that it stinks and it's not good, and this is why tickets aren't selling out. This is why WrestleMania is not sold out, because the product's not good. This is insane. It's insane behavior, people. But it doesn't stop there. We shall continue with the angle on the Friday was not done yet, because then later on in the evening, Cody Rhodes, in the same show on SmackDown, came out to cut a promo singular himself, like all by himself, later on in the evening. And a lot of people who watched it live felt that, oh, this kind of feels like it's coming out of nowhere. What is going on? Like it wasn't announced, and then there's a little bit of spontaneity maybe. But it turns out there were reasons why Cody Rhodes was sent out, because no, this promo was not planned. In the promo, well, here, let's read this article here from, once again, the Figure 4 Online. Following the opening angle that saw Pat McAfee revealed as the person Randy Orton had been speaking to on the phone, Rhodes returned to the ring to cut a promo before the main event. During the segment, he compared the earlier angle to if Disco Inferno had been the NWO's third man. Again, a reference that all of these professional wrestling fans, excuse me, what did I just say? That all of these WWE fans have no idea what it is. No idea who Cody is talking about. You know what the NWO is? It's the old guys with the black shirts. But what the fuck is a Disco Inferno? What is this thing about the third man? They have no idea. They have no clue what this is all about. On Saturday, PW Insider wrote that Rhodes' promo responding to the opening angle was not listed on the panel rundown for the show, the planned rundown for the show, and that there is belief some of Rhodes' comments reflected his real thoughts on TKO inserting McAfee into the storyline. That's very interesting. Because Cody basically, tore Pat McAfee down, but in a very promo type of way. So already we're getting reports that this was a break in case of emergency type of situation. It was like, no, whatever we had planned, we're going to scrap it and we're going to send Cody out, and we got to try and save the situation because Pat fucked up. I mean, what else is there to interpret here, sports fans? Like, legitimately, if Pat McAfee goes out, does what he does, and then later Paul Levesque needs to send Cody out to save face because the angle went so poorly because Pat said what he said, there is no other way to put it. Pat McAfee fucked up because we had to scrap the format and send Cody out for an emergency promo to save face. Can you imagine if Cody had not went back out? We'd all be left with, WWE WrestleMania. It sucks. It is terrible. It is not selling because it stinks. All part of the show. Well, that's right. That's right, chat. It's all part of the show. You enjoying the show? It's all part of the show. Body Slam Plus. Don't you think that kind of sounds like, like some kind of medical supplement? Don't you think? I know it's Body Slam's premium service, right? They're Fightful Select, they're PW Insider Elite, all this bullshit, right? I understand what it is, but don't you find that Body Slam Plus is like, it's like a supplement you can buy at GMC? Maybe it's a little sketchy, promises promises hormone growth and also make you smarter type of thing. Anyway, the Plus. Apologies. I shouldn't be commenting on other people's brandings. I mean, my podcast show is called the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. It's not exactly like I decided to. It's not exactly like I decided to deep dive into my creative juices and try to find something that would really be interesting. I shouldn't comment. Body Slam Plus similarly reported that Rhodes was instructed to go to the ring and quote unquote shoot from the hip regarding McAfee's involvement. Also noting that the promo was not listed on the planned rundown. The report added that both Rhodes and members of the WWE creative team have legitimate gripes with TKO for, quote, sticking their nose in storylines close to WrestleMania, unquote, multiple years in a row. Following the angle on Friday night, Dave Meltzer responded to a user on X who I will pull up the tweet here. We got it right here on screen. The question was, who does he think he is? ... Pat McAfee? LOL. And Dave responds to that by saying, two words, Ari call, signifying that this was a decision that came from the very top of TKO. Ari Emanuel sent in the request. So we're getting the real reactions here. There's a lot of people saying that this is how a lot of talent backstage feel about that. All the talent backstage, what they feel about regarding TKO sticking their nose in storylines for 2 years straight. Oh, wait a second. Are you telling me that Triple H, who is the creative director, right? Isn't that his title? He's the head of creative, excuse me. And such an important man, such an important, essential man. Am I understanding this correctly that he's being overruled in his role in the company? That his creative is being challenged? That can't be. I've been told so many times over the years that, and by himself, that by Paul himself, that, if WWE is as great as it is, it's, because of all the work he puts in. Folks, he works 8 hours a day on WWE Creative. He told us this. 8 full hours a day. What? How can Ari Emanuel be so oblivious to the genius of Paul Levesque here? That feels that he has to step in and overrule whatever he's setting up. Which also, in fact, if the Body Slam Plus report is indeed true, it also confirms what a lot of people were thinking last year, that the injection of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was not a Triple H call. Sure, he eventually floated away, and maybe there's something else. Maybe there's other stuff that they stuck their nose in. We don't know. Like maybe TKO got involved in other things. Then it makes you wonder, how involved were they in the John Cena retirement? How involved were they in that? Did they make any calls? Were they the ones behind the idea of John doing the turn, and all this bullshit narrative that they were creating is all just a farce? It's all a work. Now, I hate this situation. I'm going to tell you why I hate this situation. Because I am unfortunately going to be in a position, the very fucking unfortunate position, where I feel like I have to stick up for Paul Levesque. Because here's one thing we have to keep in mind. And I talked about this the minute this company, TKO, was put together and then absorbed WWE and UFC under it. I kept telling everyone, and you can go back and watch the tape and whatnot, TKO is what we call a holding company. Their job is to purchase other companies so that their company, TKO, can get richer and richer and richer. And that's all that matters. And the day-to-day, the operational aspect of things, that's delegated to the schmucks working for them in the companies that they purchase. Because TKO's only reason to exist is not to create something. It's not to produce something. It's not to deliver a service. It's to acquire companies that do that in order to help boost them so that they can do more of what they do. And ergo, the returns, the revenue that's returned to them creates bigger value and more payouts, more money for their shareholders. That's essentially what a holding company is for. And I remember saying, and I was vehement on this, especially when things started to crack. It was like, we have to point the finger at Paul Levesque. We have to sit here. If the Timu bloodline is shit, and if all these angles are shit, we have to point the finger at Paul Levesque. We can't start blaming TKO for all of these problems, because TKO their job is to not get involved. There's no reason for them to get involved. That's not what they do. And now we're getting information being leaked that TKO is indeed getting involved. Now, for me, that's them overstepping their boundaries. And I cannot, in all good faith, then sit here and take a dump on Paul Levesque and play the clip and all of that. I can't do it. Not in this circumstance. It kind of sucks for him because, I don't know, maybe he had a plan and whatnot, and and suddenly it gets, the plan takes a hard left, and suddenly he's got to put over Pat McAfee when he never wanted to do that in the first place. But because Ari Emanuel, his boss, his boss's boss, told him, no, this has got to be our boy Pat, because I want to make him the next Sylvester Stallone, which is a real thing. You got to put him in here because Pat is my boy. Now Paul is stuck with the situation he has to do. So he has to deal with this now. So it sucks because I can't blame Paul Levesque for this. I can't blame him for this specifically. But
it's time to play the game. Time to play the game.
I can tell you where I can blame Paul Levesque, though. I can blame Paul Levesque for forcing Ari Emanuel to get involved, because the creative that's leading to WrestleMania is under-delivering. And that is entirely on him. That's where if anything, Paul Levesque is an architect of his own issues right now. I was going to say demise, but he's not, he's not gone yet. If anything, right? He created the situation for himself. If he's stuck with having to use Pat McAfee and it's pissing off his people backstage, his talent is upset that they have to deal with TKO sticking their nose in this. He only has himself to blame. If he was better at his job, this would not happen. Now, I'm fence-sitting here because both situations suck. And there's not one where I'm like, Ari Emanuel is absolutely right. And there's not one where I say, poor Triple H, he's eating so much shit and it sucks for him. First of all, they're two contemptible people to begin with. So that's fine. And Ari Emanuel, who should not be getting involved into the operations, the day-to-day of one of his companies, that stinks. But Paul Levesque could have avoided this if he had done his job properly. If he had done his job properly, and they had already sold 45,000 tickets per night, Ari wouldn't have said a thing. Say, all right, Paul, go ahead and do your thing. If anything, this is a sign, another sign that Paul's luster his luster is starting to tarnish. He's not exactly the golden boy anymore. The issue, whatever happens with Paul Levesque moving forward, because we'll see what happens post WrestleMania season. Maybe everything will stay exactly the same. Who knows? But ultimately, Paul Levesque has shown that not only is he creatively bankrupt, as we like to point out here on the podcast, not only is he creatively bankrupt, he is not the guy who is truly in control of the company. He's a guy that has positioned himself as the head of creative, knowing that he is in an injectable seat. He has tried to make himself indivisible from WWE. He has made himself the face of WWE by showing up, doing all the pressers and doing media and showing up on ESPN and putting himself on the WrestleMania posters. Because for the longest time, for the past 3-4 years at this point, WWE was a hot commodity. So of course he wanted to take all the credit for it. But the thing is that now that he's made himself the face of the company and he is the man, now that if things start going a little sideways and aren't going as well as expected, he is also the guy, since he's the face of the company, who is going to get slapped around. So that's the thing. As I've said for many, many months now, Paul Levesque is in an ejectable seat in this company. He likes to walk around and pretend that he's like Vince McMahon. but Vince was the actual owner of the company. Vince could not be ousted. He could not be ejected. He just couldn't. And all Paul does is, manage talent, come up with ideas, put on a show. And frankly, there are lots of people who could do his job. And I read some wild fucking things. Like, oh, they're going to do WrestleMania in Saudi next year. They need a guy like Paul Levesque to guide this. I'm like, do you know how many people backstage will be able to drive any type of WrestleMania? And it does not need to be Paul Levesque and his boardroom creative. We're seeing more cracks here, folks, is what I'm trying to say. Not even done with this. There was a report that was put out that the Pat McAfee return was tied to corporate synergy. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select reported that McAfee's return was an effort to boost interest in the show for corporate synergy between WWE and ESPN. Oh boy. The report further noted that there were several people who were not in favor of the direction of the "this place sucks" angle of the promo and felt that those rarely work in pro wrestling. G. Willikers. Fightful Select, when they say rarely, it means never. Fightful Select also claims that the internal reaction to the return was mixed, and WWE was well aware of the online reaction. Some internally suggested that the reaction was heat, because of course. Others claimed that it was not the kind of heat the promotion needed. You think? Previously, WrestleVotes had reported that McAfee was set to return soon, although the former NFL punter denied those rumors. WWE sources informed Fightful Select that quote, McAfee is also figured into upcoming WWE programming through WrestleMania. Well, I hope the fuck he is. It's like, it's 2 weeks out. I hope he's figured into programming for the next 2 weeks. After McAfee's return, PW Insider reported that McAfee's comeback was an Ari Emanuel call. It was Dave, but all right. Emanuel has been very high on McAfee, as well as the entertainment space. This created the notion that Triple H was no longer leading the creative team. However, such is not the case, and the Hall of Famer is still leading the week-to-week creative and the vast majority on the program. Now, I find this quote interesting. The week-to-week creative. In a corporate structure, you'll have directors and you'll have managers. And the directors usually will sit down and they'll plot out like direction, right? That's what a director does. A vision for what needs to be done, if you work in a corporate structure, they'll have their targets and their goals and their KPIs for the year. And it's like, here's the vision. These are the goals we need to strike. And then you have the managers underneath. What do the managers do? Well, they execute the plan using the staff, using the forces in the staff and the talents to execute it all. If you ask me, this quote here, week to week, that he's still leading the week to week creative in the vast majority of the program, that doesn't sound to me like he's really got a clamp down on, the big picture stuff. This sounds very managerial. It sounds very third rung. Let's, we'll keep it going. We'll see how this all turns out. Tee-hee-hee. And just to clear these up, one last thing about Pat McAfee and the angle. On Sunday's Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer said that the ESPN sports talk show host and occasional WWE broadcaster, Pat McAfee, was, quote unquote, the first choice for the spot, and that it came directly from TKO head and McAfee agent Ari Emanuel. However, McAfee turned down the offer at first. Here's what Dave had to say about that. That's where it came from. They wanted celebrity involvement. Originally, from what I was told, Pat McAfee was the choice, and he turned it down. Then they were scrambling to get someone else in the spot, and then, obviously, they were able to make a deal with him. Good for Pat for stringing out these people, getting them to pay more, because that ultimately that's what happened if you refuse the first. It was like, nah, I don't want to do this. And then they go around and they start asking around, 10 I $10,000 say they called Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny turned them down. Remember those rumors when after the Super Bowl where it's like, oh, Bad Bunny will be back at WrestleMania. Remember those? There is interest in getting Bad Bunny back from WWE. Of course there would. Of course there would. He just did a disruptive, internationally recognized performance on the Super Bowl. He already wrestled for you in the past. You're going to tell me that there's not interest in getting him back? And he probably shot them down. Bunch of people shut them down. And then he went back to Pat and like, Pat, come on. And Pat was like, double my rate or something. And it must be really weird too in these negotiations and stuff when your agent is the boss of the company that's trying to hire you. It's got to be like, what kind of leverage does WWE have in this circumstance? It's got to be close to zero. Anyway, so he went and did it, and then Dave added this. This was not a WWE creative move. This was not a Paul Levesque move. It came over their heads, and there's a lot of people not happy about it at all. One person told me it was the single most counterproductive thing the company has done in a long time, but there you go. Is that chat? What is the most counterproductive thing the company has done in a long time? Is this it? Is this really it? Anyway, I wanted to really take the time to break all of this Pat McAfee stuff down because I think we're exposing a lot more stuff that's going on backstage. The fact that it is being leaked to media, that Ari Emanuel was the guy who made the call, is indeed proof that there is irritation from people in WWE, because if everyone was happy, everyone would be shutting their fucking mouths and they wouldn't be saying a goddamn thing. But there are some people who are upset that called Mike Johnson, that called Dave, and whoever else, and said, nah, this came from Ari and I'm pissed off about it. There is, and everyone is in agreement. All the journos are in agreement that it's an Ari call. Yes, people are upset about this because the news is being leaked. If everyone was okay with it, they'd be shutting up and not saying a thing. Or PR would be reaching out and say, oh, WWE worked so closely, worked closely with Ari Emanuel to bring Pat McAfee here, like something like that. But this ain't it at all. This is not it at all. This is not a happy camper move. This is a very weird move by Emanuel. We've been talking about, we've made it a mission here on the show to expose Paul Levesque as a fraud. And I think this is the biggest crack in the Paul Levesque veneer yet, that his boss is boss. Because don't forget, Paul Levesque does not answer to Ari Emanuel. He answers to Nick Khan. His boss's boss brought the hammer down and said, this is what we're doing. Tell your guy to figure it out. And then Nick Khan calls Paul and says, I got the call from Ari. You're using Pat McAfee. You figure it out. This is the biggest crack in the Paul Levesque veneer so far. So there you go. Though those are my thoughts. Sakura Genesis is the show, New Japan Pro Wrestling is the promotion, and that's what we're going to be reviewing here. Sakura Genesis from New Japan Pro Wrestling. That happened on April the 4th, 2026, over there in the Ryogoku Kokugan in Tokyo, Japan. It happened in front of 6,009 people, reportedly, that showed up for the show. A decent number, I would wager. If we were to compare it to the last time that New Japan came to the Ryogoku Kokugan for Sakura Genesis, we would go back a year. And the attendance on that occasion was 6,640 people. The main event of Hiroki Goto defending the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship against David Finlay. So it is, of course, a step down. There's, easily a difference of 600 plus tickets between the two shows. So, but then again, the Hiroki Goto run was had captivated a lot of people, made it very exciting. It's a drop, but it's not a seismic drop. It's not something completely mind-bogglingly awful where you're like, oh no, this just didn't work out. I would dare to say that in an environment like they were doing here for this show, where your main event is, essentially two young guys, two unproven quantities at the top of the promotion, going into battle, and your difference between the two is 600 tickets. Well, I would say that's not bad. It could have been a lot worse. I think if anything, this shows that the Japanese fans in Tokyo are not rejecting what New Japan is trying to do. It may not be immediately catching fire. It might not be the most exciting thing that is just like blowing everyone's minds away and everyone absolutely has to get a ticket. Last year's main event seems to have captured the imagination somewhat more than this year, but I don't think you can look at this and say this is an outright rejection. The main event with two new young guys at the top was a bad choice. No, I think this is I think that was it's a fair acceptance, I would say. I'm not going to sit around and raise the roof and high five each other and start popping champagne and saying, these are our two guys. We figured it out. We've cracked the code. No, but it is nonetheless a more positive sign, because I think it does show that whatever New Japan is trying to do now is at the very least resonating, at the very least. And as for the show itself, Sakura Genesis, I thought it was a very, very good show. A very, very good show. I was thoroughly entertained. It was a big, eventful, newsworthy show, a card that moved a lot of pieces and set up a substantial amount of business heading into the spring and right into Dominion, I think, to a degree. Of course, you probably all know by now that Callum Newman is the new IWGP Heavyweight Champion. United Empire throughout all of this established themselves as a genuine top tier heel faction, sort of making the House of Torture feel like a little bro here. They've receded further into lower card, into a lower card distraction act more than actually something that you should fear, which is fine. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot that happened on the show. A lot of very important steps moving forward for New Japan, and a lot of it was good. The honest reaction to a show like this is nonetheless the dangerous one, okay? Because I sat here unfettered, unfiltered, and told you all, yeah, this was very good. I really enjoyed the show. So it makes you want to clap your hands together, throw caution to the wind, and declare, we are so back. and that's the scary part. New Japan has spent the better part of 3 years training exactly this kind of instinct out of a lot of its most loyal fans, at least, and observers like myself, right? The New Beginning show earlier this year was a booking exercise that left me genuinely mystified. There have been stretches where getting invested felt like you were setting yourself up for disaster, for disappointment. The later stages of the New Japan Cup this year, though, started to rebuild some trust. There really was some excellent matches, some excellent booking. And now, after Sakura Genesis, there is something here that feels uncomfortably like hope. Uncomfortable because there is still the very real possibility that New Japan can pull the rug right out from under me at any given moment, and then point and laugh as I fall on my ass because it's like, ha, sucker, you bought into this again. So let's be precise about what this show was, right? It felt like a new beginning, right? That to me, it really did feel like that. What the New Beginning show should have been, I feel like they did it this month here, at the start of April. New stars taking their spots and being welcomed there by the crowd. A title picture that feels like it's genuinely unpredictable. A junior division being actively restocked and refreshed with new talent. The main event alone for this show was newsworthy enough to anchor the entire card. The show felt different. It felt fresh. And the path to the G1, when you factor in everything the Best of Super Junior field is already shaping up to be, plus all the new faces that are burgeoning in, up and down throughout the card, the path to the G1 looks more interesting than it has in a long time. But you saw this coming. But New Japan Pro Wrestling for this guy remains very firmly at arm's length. One good show is evidence. It is not proof. We might be on an upswing. Let's see if they can carry the momentum. They have earned the right to be watched carefully before being fully trusted again. I need more than what we got. Let's see if they deliver, despite the fact that what we got was very interesting. But let's see if this was let's see if this was the final course, and that we never saw. But let's just see if this was the final course when we thought it was the first, or if this was just the amuse-bouche that will kick off a full serving of multiple platters of delicious food. Does that analogy work? I sure as hell hope so. I'm not re-recording it. So we might as well start with the main event. I mean, that's the biggest thing on the show. We might even do that. Start with the main event and then work our way backwards. That's usually how I prefer doing the New Japan shows, because the really big eventful stuff always happens like towards the upper levels of the card, and then there's a lot of things at first that are just dismissive, and I'm going to focus all my energy on the stuff that deserves it, as opposed to me taking 15 minutes to break down why a trios match between the Unbound Company and what was it? Bullet Club? Not Bullet Club. The House of Torture. I think that's what it was. Why it didn't interest me. I don't look. I can't even remember what was on the. I can't even off the top of my dome. I can't even remember what were the trios matches to open things up. So it proved to point that I shouldn't waste my energy on those matches. Let's waste some energy on Callum Newman defeating Yota Tsuji to become the new IWGP Heavyweight Champion. This, of course, you've probably heard it millions of times by now. Callum Newman is now officially the youngest IWGP Heavyweight Champion in history. He just ekes out Shinsuke Nakamura like by 2 months, I think, something like they were both 23 when they won the title for the first time, but I think like Shinsuke is like he was like two at the moment he won, was like he was 2 months older than Newman. Anyway, I like this match. I liked it a lot. I thought this match was excellent. In fact, it was tremendous. And look, I don't want to pat myself on the back too hard. I don't like to do that. But when I did the preview on stream a few days ago, I had said that there is easily an 85% chance that Callum Newman is winning the title. And I know a lot of people were extremely dismissive of it. We're extremely dismissive of Newman winning the belt off of Tsuji so quickly. The argument being that we had to give more time for Yota Tsuji. It'd be a little weird to take the title off of him. Don't you want a big, strong, like dominant babyface top guy? And that made a lot of sense to me too. The thing here is that, man, I could feel it, and it's just a gut feeling. That's all there is to it. And my gut has been very good to me for a long time. So sure, I was kind of expecting. So when my gut decided, is what I should say, when my gut decided that, there's a very good chance he's going to win, well, I sort of started to trust it. I feel like everything was in place to make sure that Callum Newman got the upper hand here. Not only because it felt like they were booking him as if they were about to, strap him up with a rocket, but because it seems they're finally deciding to do what a lot of people, including myself, very vocally myself, have been asking New Japan for a while. Push new stars. Put the big titles on new people, on young talent. Make the top of the card feel fresh. I am not going back I'm not going back and playing that broken record over and over again. I think all of my previous New Japan reviews speak of this at some point. And hopefully this is the last time I actually have to bring it up. But I'm bringing it up now, not because they didn't do it, but because I want to emphasize that they are doing it, that they're betting on young talent, and it's a process that they should have started years ago. They should have started this when Hiroshi Tanahashi's body started to break down, when Tetsuya Naito's body refused to do wrestling moves, when Will Ospreay left, when Kazuchika Okada left. This is when they should have done it. And I sincerely believe New Japan would be in a different, better place in 2026. I guess it's better late than never, I guess. But also, no, they really should have started beforehand and, sort of capitalize on a lot of similar things that have been happening in Japanese wrestling over the past couple of years as well, where other promotions have been pushing fresher, younger top talent in their promotions, like in Noah, like in Stardom, and it's been paying dividends. For some reason, New Japan has always been always never had the confidence to go full on with it. They tried with Zack Sabre Jr. that had kind of like that balance, was fresh enough at the top that it wasn't a guy who had been there over and over again, but was maybe you associate him a little more with another era. That's exactly the vibe you get with Hiroki Goto. Again, not a guy who had been at the top, but a guy you absolutely do associate with the golden era of the 2010s. And in the meantime, you're pushing no one else. In the meantime, it's just like a big gray blob of guys. Oh, and don't forget Sonata. That was a stroke of genius, right? And in the meantime, all of your new guys are just a big gray blob of dudes without anything interesting or no personality or nothing to help set them apart. And I told you I wouldn't rehash the point, but here I am rehashing the point. It's a legitimate criticism, though. It's a legitimate criticism. But look, here's where they are now. They're doing it. Okay, they're doing it. Started with Yota Tsuji, and now they're going into Callum Newman, a guy that they had earmarked right on January 5th. They're like, this is the guy right here. Pay attention. That's essentially what happened. So something in New Japan right now genuinely feels different. But look, back to the match itself, I thought it was excellent. I think you could build, like I said, you could feel that there was something building, with the way they handled the New Year Dash angle with Will and the rest of the United Empire. That was the seed. And you could absolutely see the rest of it coming through this match as well. Will being there and really feeling like the outsider, really feeling like there's a kind of awkwardness. All of the United Empire went and sat in the audience during Callum's match, but not Will. Will was right there, encouraging him and encouraging him and giving him and coaching is what I was trying to say, and coaching him from ringside. And he would even get involved at some point in the match as well, trying to plead with Callum not to use a chair, which is a very Will Ospreay way of doing things. That I don't think that bit of the match structure came from anywhere else than Will Ospreay. That 100% felt like a Will thing. But yeah, it didn't overtake the match. It didn't even it didn't affect the finish. I don't think it had that much of an impact other than adding some dramatic flair to this simmering rivalry that will eventually boil over between Newman and Will. And the cheating that Newman did use, when he eventually did start to cheat in the match, it didn't feel like he was just doing it for the sake of doing it, and nor did it feel like he was just doing it for some cheap heat. When Newman does it, and to be clear, I don't have an issue with heels using underhanded tactics to win. That's part of the thing, but there is a saturation point in all of these circumstances. But the way Newman does it, like I said, it's not necessarily to just garner heat or just, create chaos or whatever. It comes across as a guy who cheats because he doesn't respect his opponent, because he just figures there's no point in me doing all of this effort because you don't matter. That's the energy that Callum Newman gives off to me when he does his cheating. It doesn't feel desperate. It doesn't feel like, we had this big plan set up. It's more like, no, I'm going to do this because I can and because I should. Because there is no point in me going full effort on you. And that's very interesting. And it showed straight off the bat. Like, Newman attacked before the bell, so, instantly aggressive. And the match started off, fast-paced, opening with both guys anticipating each other, nobody landing clear, big moves early. The human game of chess was absolutely going here. And so Yota Tsuji does a suicide dive to take control. No one tell Pete Rosenberg. Then Callum Newman gives some big PKs to his midsection, as commentary puts over the fact that Newman is he could have played professional football/soccer. We've heard this story multiple times, but it's always a good reminder, especially now that he's being positioned as a top guy, to just bring back these little elements of the story that surrounds him, his own personal voyage, I guess, the things from his past that justify why getting kicked in the gut by Callum Newman will probably hurt you more, 2 times, 3 times, 5 times more than if you get kicked in the gut by, Warren Hayes. Callum Newman goes for a corner splash, but Tsuji just grabs him like he's Patrick Swayze in Dirty Dancing and just chucks him across the ring, followed by a Frankensteiner as well. We get a Tiger Suplex near fall by Callum Newman. He lost the grip on the bridge, legitimately lost the grip on the bridge. And commentary was perfect just to pick it up and say, oh, well, there you go. That's why he kicked out. He couldn't hang on to, that's good cover for an obvious little flub. Nothing serious, just oh, shit, it didn't quite land. But, then there was the kick out, and then commentary can use that as that's how Yota Tsuji was able to kick out of that. Tsuji just spikes Callum's head right into the floor. It was a tremendous spot that Newman sold perfectly, right? Selling it as, genuine concussion trauma, dazed, glassy-eyed, seemed to be on instinct. Tsuji then exploits the wobbly Newman with a lariat, but he accidentally stomps Red Shoes, with the Newman capitalizing afterwards with a running knee from behind. This is where Callum Newman, we mentioned it, calls for the chair. He gets Zane J to toss him a chair, but Will Ospreay physically blocks him from using the chair, actually grabs the chair, holds on to it, and begs him, says, you don't do it this way, don't do it this way. And Newman sort of lets it go, but you can tell that he's like, okay, I can't do this right now because I'm about to win the world championship. Within his mind, he's going, this motherfucker is getting in my way of me winning the championship. I'm going to focus on that. Then I'll come back for this guy eventually. But then Tsuji runs in with a hidden blade-esque shot. And he gives a nice smirk at Ospreay on top of that. So that was pretty cool. Newman lands his own hidden blade directly to Yota Tsuji's face. And I didn't mention it either. There's a couple of occasions where Newman tries to go for a couple of Oscutters, which are, clear Will Ospreay moves. And he does the O thing with his hands and arms. So, it's clearly that, but both times that he tries the Os cutter, they fail. So that's not lost on me on a detail. I was kind of surprised that the hidden blade does eventually land for Newman, but the other Ospreay adjacent moves or identifiable moves, they failed out, because I was all in on the story that everything that everyone has always said about Callum Newman, about him being an Ospreay clone, now is working against him. And I think we can even go back over months and maybe a couple of years as well, where you'd see Callum Newman try the Os cutter, and everyone would have a counter for it, because everyone's like, most of the guys that he was fighting were people that fought Will Ospreay, and they're like, no, I know how to counter this. This is dumb, kind of thing. So eventually, I think maybe, I think it's an interesting story that Callum Newman's evolution as a pro wrestler also clearly means breaking with Will Ospreay, not unlike Will Ospreay did with his own mentor and stuff like that. And by doing that break, then abandoning everything that associates him with Ospreay. So no more Os cutters, no more hidden blades, no more attempts at, Stormbreakers and Pip Cheerio and Cheeky Nandos and all that. There's no more of that. Once, I think there's going to be a lot of the story moving forward between Newman and Ospreay that is going to be Callum Newman divesting himself of everything Will Ospreay, and it's an excellent story to tell. It's a very basic story of the mentor being one-upped by his student. It's a tale as old as time, but it works. It's a good story. Sometimes these stories are classics for a reason. It's because they just work. They just fucking work. Tsuji has a great sequence where he does a German, a destroyer, a spear as well. Newman counters a gene blaster with a lariat, hits the Princess Curse, but Tsuji kicks out, who then follows with an alley-oop German as well. But the finish comes when Newman uses the referee as a shield to abort a gene blaster, then pins Tsuji with, I'm not sure exactly what he calls it, like some sort of F5 style slam. Tremendous match. Absolutely excellent stuff. I'd give it 4.5 stars. I enjoyed this tremendously and really, really did help establish Callum Newman, put him on the map. It had to. They're going for him as world champion. So yeah, as their top guy. So yes, it should put him on the map. Wouldn't you say, Warren? Yes, I agree. There's something genuinely different happening in this promotion right now. As I mentioned, the Best of Super Juniors field, in and about itself. We'll talk about it, but you've probably already seen it. It signals a company actively going out to find new energy rather than waiting for it to arrive, which has been the case for a couple of years, right? Could it be that New Japan is finally catching up to the trends that have been tokens of success elsewhere? Betting on new young talent, putting them on top spots, creating genuine unpredictability. We'll have to see whether Callum Newman moves business or not, but I'll be damned if I'm not curious and, dare I say, excited about what's going to come next. And it's some very interesting, wrinkles, very interesting flows that they're giving to this angle, right? Like, again, the cheating during the match didn't bother me. It comes across as contempt rather than desperation. And I think that's really, really interesting. He's doing it to Yota Tsuji because he thinks less of Yota Tsuji as a peer, as opposed to, I cannot beat you. He just, it's a character distinction nonetheless that sets him apart from, the incessant clown card nonsense of the House of Torture. And I think moving on from here, if you ask me, Ospreay Newman is happening at Dominion. I think that's coming up. People are floating Forbidden Door around for Ospreay Newman, but I don't understand why you do that. I don't know why AEW fans would have a personal investment in this. This is a New Japan angle first and foremost, right? The payoff should live in New Japan more than in an AEW cross-branded show. That for an angle that will concern no one. If first of all, the crossover between AEW watchers and New Japan watchers is not as concentric as it once was. There's a whole swath of the audience that will see Callum Newman and will go, "Who is this guy? We don't understand. We don't know who this guy is." It just wouldn't make sense. This is a story made for New Japan. It should happen in New Japan. And the relationship has never, between Newman and Ospreay, has never been prevalent in AEW. It would just be a complete mystery to everyone. And the relationship will be such a key factor here. I talked about it again with the Oscutter stuff, but the move that works, the move here is that the relationship with Will is unresolved, and that unresolved thread is why the fight is going to happen between them. Newman needs to exercise the Ospreay clone allegations, I guess, let's put it that way, to move forward as a competitor in his own right. Will Ospreay, himself, the man as opposed to the wrestler, Will Ospreay, the man, will be more than happy to do the honors for Callum. That's a match that I really do, I'm excited to see, and that they have some time to build, and Dominion is the destination, right? Dominion is the destination. And I gotta say, I was a little surprised that United Empire did not turn on Will Ospreay here, which was slightly surprising, but I think it's the right call. The slow burn is working, and the visual evidence is accumulating, right? United Empire arriving, and matching Reservoir Dog suits, and while Ospreay sat at ringside coaching his protege, the whole look of United Empire, no black t-shirts, not a bunch of thugs or ruffians, a faction that is going to take its heeldom seriously. I think that's very good. And then you've got Will Ospreay, a man who increasingly doesn't look like he belongs in it. It's tremendous right now. I think they are very clearly stepping up United Empire to be the top heel faction of New Japan. And I'm okay with it. There's a lot with the directions that they have right now, with what we've seen where they're going. I'm completely okay with it. Except for Jake Lee, he sucks. Yota Tsuji, if we post-mortem this, I guess, to a degree, his reign was good, short, but good. And it's good because and even in the lead up to the Wrestle Kingdom match, becoming a champion, and in the lead up to him becoming a champion, I feel made him a more solid in-ring performer. I buy him more as a top guy than I did before the run started, not because, he won a title and I'm a mark, but because his demeanor changed. The way he connects with the crowd has changed. He's taken on a locker room leader dimension as well, and that's a shoot, brother. He's taking this role of being the standard bearer of the company very, very seriously. And it all coalesced. It all coalesced, leading to his world championship shot at Wrestle Kingdom. I think he's a more complete performer coming out of this run than he was going in. It's been beneficial for him. I don't think this is going to be his last title reign, because I think we've hit something with Tsuji. There's a code that's been cracked. There is no mistake that he is the guy who is going to stand up for New Japan against that traitor Gabe Kidd, right? Who attacked him in the post match. We'll get to the post match stuff in just a second, but it's not a mistake. These are not things that we're just pulling out of our ass here. It's not his last run at the top. I don't think there's anything to be embarrassed about. Could it have been longer? Yes. But I think what he has done for himself is tremendous. I think he really embraced the role of being the top guy. It shows, and it did make him better overall. So let's talk about what happened in the post match. It was an eventful post match where of course Will Ospreay is in the ring. He celebrates with Newman before the rest of the United Empire come in. But while that is happening, Yota Tsuji's on the floor, and Gabe Kidd shows up out of nowhere. He's masked. He unmasks himself, to reveal himself as Gabe Kidd, and he starts beating down on Yota Tsuji, and there's a big reaction from the crowd who seem genuinely happy to see him back. He gets a big pop, but then when he unzips his hoodie to reveal the AEW t-shirt, everyone goes boo, which is exactly what Gabe Kidd had been gunning for, which is why he did the press conference, the post-match presser, for Revolution, right? Wasn't it for Revolution? When he got up at the podium and said, fuck New Japan Pro Wrestling, fuck that cripple Hiroshi Tanahashi, and so on and so forth. I mean, these are not mistakes. These are all things that are going his way. Of course, Gabe Kidd is dual contracted right now. So, he doesn't truly believe or want New Japan to go under, but he's playing off the sentiments. He's playing off fan frustration with the AEW stuff, and he's using it to his advantage. I mean, that's just wrestling 101. See what the fans are upset about and lean into that. And that makes sense. And if this means that we're getting another Gabe Kidd Yota Tsuji match, that's fine. That is more than fine. Their matches have all been great to excellent. These guys have absolute bonkers chemistry with each other. Go. Let's go. Let's go right ahead. And there's a match that you could have in international waters because it's for the global title, or at least we would assume eventually it would. Well, he did. Yeah. No, he did grab the global title and whatnot. So, he'll be coming back for his global title, which they've been ping-ponging off of each other. So I'm completely okay with this. This is a good little angle. And then, well, it just so happens that Shingo Takagi ran to Yota's defense, and then somehow Shingo ended up in the ring. He did a little goofiness, and then eventually decided to challenge Callum Newman, mirroring what happened with Will Ospreay, where Shingo was Will's first challenger as well. But it's more than just mirroring, right? Like, it's Shingo's the gatekeeper now. Like, this is his role. This is what he does in the company now. He's going to have a big first defense. That's his thing. That's what he does. And he's going to be the first big challenger is what I meant to say. Excuse me. He's going to be a big credible guy that will be able to get a great match out of whoever he wrestles because he's Shingo Takagi. But that's it. Like, Shingo's not winning the title here. I hope everyone has made peace with that. I hope everyone has made peace with the fact that Shingo Takagi will never be, IWGP heavyweight champion ever again. Which I've begrudgingly made peace with that because Shingo fucking rules. Anyway, this is exactly what we wanted New Japan to do for years at this point. They're doing it. They are pushing a young, talented upstart, and we will see how it goes. And they're doing it differently than how they did it with Ozawa, they being Noah, how Stardom did it with Saya Kamatani. They are not surrounded by black t-shirt, a black t-shirt faction of guys or gals who keep just overwhelming the competition with cheating and fucking bullshit nonsense. They're trying their own little sauce for this. So I'm all for this. I enjoy the match was excellent. The angles coming out of this are good. There's a lot of possibilities. I cannot wait for the inevitable Newman Ospreay match. All this is going to be great. I'm very, very much looking forward to it. I mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. 4.5 stars for the main event. Let's keep going down. Knockout Brothers defeated the TMDK duo of Zack Sabre Jr. and Ryohei Oiwa. Well-constructed match once again with strong limb work from both teams, but eventually the TMDK guys got the upper hand over it. Like even if Yuto Ice wants to focus on something on a body part and work it, there's no one in the business that is better at that, I should say, than Zack Sabre Jr. and wrestling with his protege, who is learning everything that Zack knows. Well, I mean, yeah, at first you might think, oh, I'll be able to do this too. But then what happens? You get clearly outmatched, outclassed. And this is exactly what happened. And the structure of the match really was put around Oiwa and Ice, effectively, they were the two guys that were put in the position to carry the bulk of the big drama of the match to its completion at the end. I thought it was very, very well done for a match in which I disliked the finish. I really, really did not like the finish. It was a quality match. I'll just go ahead. Look, it's a 4-star match, but maybe we had a 4.25, 4.5 star match, but that finish took me completely out of it, mainly because, like I mentioned, the TMDK duo just overwhelmed Yuto Ice and Oscar for that matter, and were dominated throughout the entirety of the match. That long stretch where Oiwa is just working over the arm of Yuto Ice, you're like, where's Oscar? Where's the Undertaker Oscar? And he's on the floor being wrapped up into fucking knots and octopuses and whatever else by Zack Sabre Jr. Zack Sabre Jr. is basically running defense. Not counter offense would be defense, right? He's basically running defense for Oiwa to do his thing against Yuto Ice. So when the finish comes, right? Eventually, when the finish comes, when Ice sort of when the Ice breaks out of all of this, and then lands his wobbly knee. Well, I don't know. There's a name for it, no doubt, but I don't know what it is. And just with one knee strike, he takes out Oiwa. I'm like, nah, this is bullshit. Like if you want to do this, if you want your champions to come back from an impossible spot, like, build to it. Give me something. But this flash victory, I'll just land my finisher, blonk. That fucking pisses me off. That annoys me. It makes me, that's kind of like, why did I just watch the entirety of this match then? Why did I just watch the challengers completely own completely own the champions if the champions are not going to have to fight back to get their spot? I don't like this. I thought it, I really felt it cheapened the match. An excellent match nonetheless. I was just, and again, Warren, are you splitting hairs here? Maybe I am, where I'm saying, I gave it 4 stars, but I could have given it more. I just fucking hated the finish and I'm only focused on the finish. No, this was really fucking good. This was really, really good because Ryohei Oiwa is an excellent professional wrestler. He's a guy who is able to make the fundamentals, the basic shit, look exciting and compelling. What was it, 2-3 years ago at this point? The headlock match that he had in Noah against Kaito Kiyomiya. Was it part of a tournament? I can't quite remember. It doesn't matter. But he had a singles match with Kaito Kiyomiya one-on-one that went the limit, that went 30 minutes. And it's essentially him grounding Kiyomiya down with headlocks. And when said out loud like that, you're probably like, that sounds like some Randy Orton bullshit, Warren. I'm not into that. But you fucking watch the match and you're on the edge of your seat for these fucking headlocks. It's like that I can get into when people, when those people start saying, slap on a headlock, kid. If it would always be like this, I would not have an issue with those types of matches. But I can't emphasize this enough. Every hope spot in this match that Yuto Ice had was immediately neutralized by Oiwa, returning to the arm relentlessly, effectively, like a page out of Zack Sabre Jr.'s book. Just excellent fucking stuff. And you do get the hot tags, don't get me wrong. There are hot tags to Oscar and so on and so on. Like, there's the typical elements. And what added to this was the referee at some point. If we go back to talk about Oiwa working the arm, the referee at some point is cautioning Oiwa for going too far with the arm work. Man, he's like, he's pushing him off and he's like, stop. you're going to pop it out of its socket, and you're going to rip the arm straight off the shoulder if you keep doing this. This is not happening in my ring. That adds to the drama, to the violence, where you're like, okay, like even the referee is concerned here. I loved it so much, and it sucks that the finish was what it was, because I really think the finish takes away a lot from what we saw throughout this match. It's a couple of half stars less, depending on where your flight of fancy takes you. And I gotta tell you, for as great as Zack Sabre Jr. is for the ground game, for the technical stuff, Ryohei Oiwa, as stocky and strong and powerful that he is, and how good he can to mix it up on the striking level, on a big move level. I'll tell you what, you see this kid operate, you see him go, and Jesus Christ, I'll be damned if Ryohei Oiwa just might not be the most total package offensive wrestler out there right now. The kid can do it all. And as long as he keeps hanging out with Zack is just going to keep pumping his head full of, this is how you twist a human being into fucking slinky or whatever. But it was good. It was good. I'm not down on the match. I'm down on the finish. The match was really, really good. A 4-star match without any question. And the Knockout Bros retain. I think my bias is starting to show here. Ryohei Oiwa is right now the most untapped of the new guys that this company has. They're pushing. It's still boggling my mind that Shota Umino still gets, stronger positioning on these cards than Ryohei Oiwa does, who is so good at what he does. And we've seen it. We saw it during the New Japan Cup when he won with that one main event. He's great with the crowd on top of that. He gets out of the ring and he takes the time to high five everyone and take selfies with the pretty girls and, pat the little kids on the head. And he's so good. And he's smiling and you can see it in his eyes. Whereas you remember Shota Umino when he'd do that? He'd come through the crowd and he'd find the kid and he'd give him his rubber band bracelet. He'd stay stoic. He'd be just like going through the motions and like, come on, man, show the kids something here. And it's, oh my God. It's just like, fuck off. So I was disappointed. What I'm trying to say is I was disappointed that Ryohei Oiwa walked out of this without a big win, without being tag team champion. Is this a sign that they might have something else for him? Like, I don't expect him to, come out of Dominion in a couple of months and then be positioned to have this tremendous G1. I mean, look, at this stage right now with the information that's available and what I'm seeing, what I'm observing, that would be my gut. But if New Japan continues down a path of unexpected events, maybe we will end up with Ryohei Oiwa main eventing the Tokyo Dome. Who knows? Let's keep going. Wait. Who knows? But after the match, Yuto Ice grabs the microphone and issues an open challenge, calling out. It seems like he's doing an open challenge, but he actually calls out Bishamon specifically. But Great-O-Khan and Hanare walk out in their matching Reservoir Dog suits, and they insert themselves into the title picture. And then afterwards, Bishamon come out to respond to the challenge. And Yuto Ice is like, "All right, let's get high, big up." I'm sorry. It is still, and I understand it's a language. It's just a nuance in language stuff, right? Because they're not native speakers, but your catchphrase being "let's get high," that being your catchphrase, and then ending it with "big up." I'm like, it's just funny. It's just really funny. So that's what we're going to be looking at. Is it going to be a 3-way? Is there going to be a number one contendership between Bishamon and the United Empire guys? That's what I'm hoping for more than the 3-way stuff. But it's New Japan, so So the triple threat, the three-way stuff will likely not be the plan, but then again, you never quite know. So moving on, Konosuke Takeshita and Shota Umino went to a time limit draw for the New Japan Pro Wrestling World Television title match. You can watch this match for free on pretty much anything. New Japan World, YouTube. Else would it be on though? I said pretty much anything, but where else would you find it? But it is available on those two services, as all television title matches are. I thought this match started to really cook by the end, and then the clock rang. It went ding, 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 and saved both men from having to resolve anything. Oh dear. But the match started fast. And because you're like, well, this is 15 minutes, so it should be, with Takeshita going after the arm early and Umino responding, with a series of DDT variations. And, I thought showed some, dare I say, creativity from Shota. And, but the final 3 minutes had genuine urgency. Like both men belonged in a bigger fight at this point. There's a rematch down the pike between these two guys, and I think it will be very, very interesting. I think it'll be very good because they didn't push the pedal to the floor here. They didn't go to their absolute limit. They went to the 15-minute time limit, but not the absolute limit. Yeah, in the last few minutes, they're doing a strike exchange. Takeshita is absorbing big shots, refusing to go down. Umino does a messy poison rana. It was fine. It was just messy. And they both take each other down with lariats, and they just can't count. They just can't get a 3 count before the clock expires. And yeah, so there you go. But it was good. It was a very good match. I'd give it like 3 3/4 stars. Here's something interesting. Here's something to underscore. Konosuke Takeshita is in 3 promotions, right? He's operating in New Japan Pro Wrestling, AEW, and DDT, and none of these 3 organizations seem to be moving forward with him as a top-line bet. Now, I understand that DDT, he might have his status in DDT might be a little different, but neither New Japan, neither AEW feel like they're fully confident in him. This is his 3rd time limit draw in 2026. Okay? It's either a creative choice or a symptom of that ambiguity that, he's got these 3 promotions, but he's the master of none. And it kind of feels more like that one, that maybe these 3, this triple contracted stuff, maybe it's working against him. I don't know, because I do not understand why you wouldn't push Konosuke Takeshita to the fucking moon. Now, New Japan did that last year. Have him win the G1, main event, big spot in the Tokyo Dome. Would have main evented had it not been the retirement of one of the legitimate greatest of all time, facing a generational rival who also happens to be one of the legitimate greatest of all time. If it weren't for that silly little encounter, Takeshita would have very likely been in the main event. But I don't understand. I don't understand, especially since, post-match, the Lone Star Outlaw, Chase Owens, comes in to get a pound of flesh. And I'm like, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, what are we doing with Konosuke Takeshita? He is one of the best wrestlers on planet Earth right now. And this is, as much as it is baffling what they're doing in AEW with him, having him go another match of the year candidate match against Jon Moxley and not winning the stupid Continental title. It's not stupid, but not winning the title. I'm just venting my frustrations here. Not only did he not win the title and beat Jon Moxley, now he's over in New Japan. He's being saddled with the Lone Star Outlaw. I don't know what to tell you, folks. I do not get it. I don't understand it. 3 companies not one of them is using him as a top guy. Oh, and this is the point. I just realized I missed the point that I was trying to make with New Japan and pushing him last year. So they did give him a shot at the top. He was IWGP World Heavyweight Champion after all, but they didn't book him well. They didn't give the fans rejected it because they did see him as a guy who doesn't go here. And the booking was never really clear as to whether that's what he was or if he was supposed to be a babyface. And like that was flubbed. And again, you know, how do you mess that up? How do you mess up Konosuke Takeshita so bad? It is, I mean, so bad. It's not a complete disaster, but when you see that this guy has an extremely high ceiling and you're somehow not actively trying to raise him to that ceiling, it just blows my mind. Now he's going to be scumming with fucking Chase Owens now. It's mind-boggling to me. But a very good match nonetheless that happened. And Shota Umino, listen, I think he's finally starting to find that footing that the company had been waiting for a long, long time. I thought, you know, the stuff that he did in this match was cool and inventive, and he feels committed. Now it's almost as if he started to find a flame, a passion for what he's doing, and he's not just going through motions anymore. Where I'm not saying like he's the final product here that's like, finally, we're all in on Shota Umino, but I do think that he's found some footing. We're definitely on the right track here. So a good match, 3 3/4 stars. The never open weight 6-man tag team titles were defended by Bishamon successfully. Well, Bishamon and Boltin Oleg by defeating the House of Torture trio, Ren Narita, Yujiro Takahashi, and Chase Owens. Look, this was, you want to hear the biggest praise I can give this match? This was more inspired than your standard House of Torture multi-man affair, and the interference was kept to a tolerable level, but it was still nonetheless a House of Torture match with which comes structural baggage that no amount of effort escapes. You know, and guys that you just don't want to see this far up on a cut. I do not want to see Yujiro Takahashi. I do not want to see Chase Owens. Like, this is also like, this is the thing that drags the company down. Instead of watch to Dick Togo ringing the bell while the babyfaces have someone in a submission. And look, Yoshihashi pins Yujiro Takahashi after doing the Shoto. Meanwhile, Boltin Oleg has Narita in the Argentine backbreaker. And this is, I guess, is the crux here. He gets the visual submission. Narita who is the never open weight champion right now, was tapping while he was in the Argentine backbreaker. And Boltin Oleg, after the match, grabs a mic and calls his shot, requests a title match against Narita. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I don't have many thoughts. Let's give it 2 3/4 stars. You know, just the definition of a match that happened. The United Empire trio of Will Ospreay, Hanari, and Great Khan defeated El Desperado, Yuya Uemura, and Taichi in a fun little trios match. Ospreay and Taichi, you know, I saw someone in a group chat say, "Oh yeah, there was this singles match between Ospreay and Taichi that happened on the show, which just so happened to be in a trios match." These guys were fantastic. They were so fucking good here with some genuine snap, dramatic near fall energy. 2 workers just doing their best, 2 excellent workers and playing off of each other excellently. You know, and it's a match that ignited the Ryogoku crowd significantly on top of that. It's genuine. Look, I genuinely wish that we could get Ospreay and Taichi in a singles match of any kind of importance in New Japan again, but it's just not going to happen. But these two, who have always worked well together, but again, just prove it again, they found a gear in this final stretch that made this match seem too small a container for Will Ospreay and Taichi. And I was watching this and I was pointing to my screen and I was like, this is it. This is what I've been missing. This is the vibe and the feeling and the work that I've been wishing to find, like the dragon I've been chasing for years with this company. From these two guys who worked in the golden era, who know what the deal was, watching them put this together, an excellent New Japan match that felt right in place in 2017, putting off great athletic feats that successfully sold you on the drama of the match, hard-hitting, exciting, clever, the kind of match where you find yourself, like me, staring at it, pointing as if that's it. This is it. This is what's missing. And everyone else, on all of the young guys on this show, I hope they all notice that. They have to tap into those same reservoirs that Taichi and Will Ospreay are still able to do. That's what they need to do. If we want New Japan to hit the highs that it once did, this is exactly the fire, the fighting spirit that's been absent. And it happened in a flash in this match. The new class needs to find it, needs to find the snap, needs to find the drama, needs to find the ability to make the crowd believe that something really awesome is happening inside these ropes. That's what the new class has to find. And I loved Ospreay giving Kawada kicks to Taichi, who just like slowly stands up with a look of complete disdain on his face. Like, are you really doing this? Because you're doing it wrong. Kind of thing. It was so good. Yu Uemura was great here too. Doing his big time. He had this great hot tag where all he did were arm drags and drop kicks. And I was like, this, because they're great. He's fucking great. There's another guy, right? He's so good at. He's so good. He's so incredibly good at this. It was tremendous stuff. I loved this match. Oh man! And when Taichi landed the dangerous suplex on Ospreay, and right on his neck, and what does Ospreay do? That son of a bitch is immediately clasping his neck. That's tremendous stuff. This was so much fun in very isolated packets. Not a bad match. This was very, very good. We'll do 3 3/4 stars on it. A very, very, very good match. That if it was broken down into other parts, into singles matches, I'm sure we would be sitting here going, what the hell? It's just fantastic stuff. It was tremendous. After the match, Great Khan and Henare immediately start double teaming El Desperado after the bell. And Ospreay's like, what are you guys doing? We don't need to do that, didn't we? And Ospreay, he doesn't want any part of it. He immediately goes up to them and says, what are you guys doing? We didn't need to do that, didn't we? Or we didn't need to do that, did we? That's the sentence. And they're kind of like, okay, sure. Like, they're continuing to show the divide, and the 3 winners are left at the end in the ring, and Ospreay throws up the crown hand signal, and Great Khan and Henare, they do not. So that one continues. Aaron Wolf, Tiger Mask, Yo, and Toru Yano defeated the House of Torture group of Sho, Doki, Yoshinobu Kanemaru, and Don Fale. That's right. We are continuing to book Don Fale on these big New Japan shows in the year of our Lord, 2026. I got nothing for you. My disdain here is pretty clear. Master Wato was supposed to be in Tiger Mask's spot, but they swapped on the way to the Honey Road 2 show. They swapped, and that was essentially to help set up Tiger Mask versus Doki, and that's what we'll be getting with Tiger Mask saying he's going to retire as IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion. They gave a date. Wasn't it July 7, I believe? I can't quite remember. I didn't write it down. But I think it was, I know it's in July 7, right? Something like that. Yeah, I mean, it's a House of Torture match. It's, Aaron Wolf hanging out with his fellow geeks, geeking it out. Aaron Wolf did get the win here. Locked in look, Aaron Wolf caught Kanemaru out of thin air into a bear hug. At some point, Kanemaru wriggles free. But then Wolf deadlifts him onto the shoulders into a big slam that he calls the landslide. And then he locks in a submission for the finish, and a nice looking submission on top of that. And here's the interesting thing. There were two people who got really spontaneous, organic, three guys who got spontaneous, organic, big reactions when they showed up. Aaron Wolf was one of these guys. And this is despite the fact that New Japan is absolutely booking him like a geek. And there's no two ways to go about it. There's no use in sugarcoating it. They are booking Aaron Wolf as a geek, and they're surrounding him with geeks, so he comes across as a geek. And yet he gets great reactions nonetheless from the Japanese crowd because he's a legitimate star. The two other people were Gabe Kidd, as I mentioned, and Will Ospreay, which I did not mention. Will Ospreay, just as Chris Charlton is done telling us about how, the New Japan fans rejected Will Ospreay. They saw him as an outsider and so on and so forth. And Will Ospreay hits the ring, gets his name announced, and gets a rousing cheer from the crowd, like one of the loudest of the night. And you could tell Will had he was taken aback by it. He was happy with it. He felt welcome. Just as we're trying to sell the idea that, the New Japan fans, they reject him. He's perceived as an outsider. Not the Tokyo fans heading into Sumo Hall. I'll tell you what, they were ready to embrace him. It was more like, hey, consider staying maybe. The Unbound Co group of Shingo Takagi, Taiji Ishimori, and Robbie X defeated the United Empire trio of that fucking useless piece of waste of space, Jake Lee, Francesco Akira was great, and Jacob Austin Young. Did I say Austin? Austin. Jacob Austin Young. Yeah, entertaining enough. It was fine. It was, I thought Jacob Austin Young. Now I'm gonna say Austin moving forward. I know. Jacob Austin Young I thought his heel work was very good here. I thought he was very good. And Robbie X, this match was a Robbie X showcase. Taiji Ishimori worked the bare minimum for this one, just essentially coming in to do double team moves with Robbie X. And then Shingo did his stuff, but Robbie really did the majority of the heavy lifting in this match. This was for him, mostly fighting Francesco Akira and Jacob Austin Young, because the other pile of goo, the fucking lanky Stretch Armstrong nonsense weirdo who decided that he's wearing clown masks, and under the clown mask he's doing like black and white, jester, Joker / the Crow makeup. I am so done with Jake Lee, and he did jack shit in this match either. Just like Taiji Ishimori, he was like, he bumped once in this entire match. He can go hit. Yeah, God, he can hit the bricks. I still don't know why New Japan decided to pick this guy. Anyway, Last of the Dragon by Shingo on Jacob Austin Young for the win. 3 stars. Good little match. And then the TMDK duo of Hartley Jackson and Kosei Fujita defeated Master Wato and Togi Makabe. This was the match that Tiger Mask was supposed to be in. It's fine. Just, not unlike the previous match we just talked about, this was about Hartley Jackson. This was a time to shine for Hartley Jackson. He did a lot of the heavy lifting. It's fine. It was a perfectly acceptable wrestling match that didn't have anything special about it. 2 3/4 stars. It's fine. It's fine. And the pre-show match had Kushida and Masatori Yasuda defeating Taisei Nakahara and Tetsuya Matsumoto. That Yasuda kid, he can't leave and come back from excursions soon enough. I think we got something here, pals. And I love Tatsuya Matsumoto too as well. Good little standard veteran young lion match. The young lions are always full of vigor. It's always fun to see just how hard they're going to hit each other and whatnot. It was good. And then you have Kushido's just stretching the fuck out of them to the point that commentary even had to say something about it. It's like, oh, well, Kushida is, he's really taking it to these young lions. He was going pretty hard. So there you have it, folks. Sakura Genesis 2026, a very good show. If you, there's quite a few things to watch here. I think you can sit down and enjoy the business end of the show. I think it's all very good. And then you throw in there the United Empire versus Desperado Taichi and Yumera match, just to see the Will Ospreay Taichi stuff. And of course, Yumera, but mostly the Taichi Will Ospreay stuff, which was phenomenal. Those are my recommendations. If you can't sit down and watch the whole thing, those are my recommendations for a good show. But it flew by for me. Next thing I know, the show was heading into the main event. I was like, oh, okay, I'm entertained. This is going well. Thank you, New Japan, and thank you for watching the review. No, wait, I lied. I said that we were going to go over very quickly the Best of Super Junior 2026 blocks. They were all entirely announced. We wrapped up the mystery men that were left with a big reveal on Sakura Genesis. Specifically, the last two names that were added were Nick Wayne from AEW joining the fray, which will be his, as far as I know, it's his first return to in-ring competition since his injury. I guess maybe they'll book him on AEW, but look, or he'll do his return quite simply at the Best of Super Juniors. I thought, when did he do it? Like 2 years ago, I believe, not last year, maybe the year before that. I thought he did pretty well for himself. Very excited to see that again. But I think the bigger surprise here was Jun Kasai being added to the tournament. And what does that involve? That's a bit of a wild card there, and it got a big rousing cheer from the collective, from the Tokyo faithful there watching the show. That's something I did not see coming. Jun Kasai in the tournament. Sure, let's go though. It'll be a lot of fun. And these are what the blocks look like. For block A, Master Wato, Rizuki Taguchi, Kosei Fujita, Robbie X, Francesco Akira Doki, Titan Valiente Jr., which I'm very stoked for, Nick Wayne, and Jun Kasai. Very intriguing block A. As far as block B goes, El Desperado, Kushida, Yo, Robbie Eagles, Taiji Ishimori, Jacob Austin. See, I'm doing Austin now. This is going to be something I'm going to have to break. Jacob Austin Young, Sho, Yoshinobu Kanemaru, Hyo, which is really interesting, and Daisuke Sasaki rounding out block B. If you ask me, I think block A is the more interesting of the two blocks. I think I think that's the one that entices me the most. Not to mention that block B has two members of House of Torture in there, and so there's going to be 2 matches per week, or per card, I should say, when block B is around, that we'll be able to skip. So solid, interesting. Like it's interesting, and that's all I really ask from New Japan as a baseline. Make things interesting. This feels like we're really starting to mix things up again. Never mind what happened over the past couple of years, where it just felt the same thing over and over again. There was a concerted effort here to really get some international flair, some flair from different promotions in Japan, guys working the junior heavyweight circuit. Like, I think this has the foundations to be a very good tournament. And it's a little jarring, I'm not going to lie, to have a Best of Super Juniors and not have Hiromu Takahashi in there. This is going to be the first tournament without Hiromu, the first post Hiromu Best of Super Junior. So I'm not gonna lie, it's a little jarring to see that, but you know what? I think it's for the best, because it's opened up another slot. We're getting someone else in his stead, something different, something refreshing. I'm all for it. I mean, it's like I was saying at the start of the review. There was it feels like there's a concerted effort now to make things different, fresh, make things just stand out, not be ordinary. And the Best of Super Juniors field sort of feels like that. So there you go. Now we're officially done with the review. And that about does it for another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. Thank you all so very much for joining me today. If you wouldn't mind leaving a like, well, just trying one more time to get what I need. A like, a 5-star review, 5-star rating, anything, whatever. I would appreciate it a great deal. But I will be back tomorrow, Thursday, with a brand new edition of the AEW Dynamite Review, which we do every week here on the podcast. And then later on in the evening, on the same Thursday, streaming live on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes, of course, as we do every Thursday and Monday. So it will be my pleasure to welcome you back for some more fantastic live streaming. But listen, in the meantime, I'm going to wish you a great rest of your week. Thank you very much for being here, and I'll see you next time.